Chapter 2169. He's too strong. Who would have thought that he would have such terrifying means? That's right. Look at how low-key he usually is. Even when dealing with the Feng family, he only used his brain. I've never seen him fight, so everyone thought that he was just smart and knew how to scheme, but didn't have much strength. Who would have thought that his strength would be so terrifying? You really amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. Everyone was shocked when they saw this scene. However, Wang Yin was burning with anxiety. Although she agreed with Qin Feiyang's guess that Feng Zihan killed Gao Xiaowei and the other two, a guess was just a guess. Killing Feng Zihan without evidence would cause a lot of trouble. But she not only admired Qin Feiyang, but also felt grateful. Because it was Qin Feiyang who allowed her to enter the law enforcement hall. Otherwise, she would just be an ordinary disciple after being expelled from the resource hall. So, she didn't want Qin Feiyang to be punished because of this. But Qin Feiyang was too strong now, and she couldn't stop him at all. Clang. The blood-red longsword clanged, its edge destroying the world. Boom. More than half of the giant mountain below had collapsed. One had to know. Because of the purple gold divine tower. This giant mountain had been tempered by divine power, and its hardness was comparable to divine metal. But even so, it couldn't bear the sharpness of the blood-red longsword. The purple gold divine pagoda was also in imminent danger. Although the purple gold divine tower had a time array, it was still a spatial divine item, which meant that its grade was higher than other spatial divine items. And Qin Feiyang, after activating the slaughter domain, could even destroy a heaven-defying divine item. So if they continued to fight, even if they didn't hit the purple gold divine tower directly, it would be destroyed sooner or later. Of course, Qin Feiyang definitely wouldn't do that. Because Empyrean Palace was indebted to the ancestor, it was also indebted to him. The purple gold divine tower was one of the most important divine items in Empyrean Palace. He didn't even have time to protect it, so how could he destroy it? But, indeed, he had to end the battle quickly. Putting aside whether or not the purple gold divine pagoda would be destroyed, the slaughter zone would only last for an hour. If he still had not killed Feng Zihan after an hour, then he would not have the chance anymore. With this thought in mind, Qin Feiyang gripped his blood-colored sword and executed the walk formula, charging towards Feng Zihan in a frenzy. I don't believe it. Feng Zihan came back to his senses and roared in anger. The Azure Phoenix sword exploded with light as it slashed towards Qin Feiyang. A divine artifact that surpassed the legendary level was something she could not accept. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. The blood-colored longsword that was slashing towards Feng Zihan suddenly changed its trajectory, heading straight for Feng Zihan's shoulder. Crack. Following a crisp crack, Feng Zihan's arm broke off on the spot. Qin Feiyang coldly smiled. He grabbed the Azure Phoenix sword and sent it to the ancient castle. What? He actually stole the Azure Phoenix sword. He even cut off one of Feng Zihan's arms. Everyone was dumbfounded. And Feng Zihan was also extremely shocked. Although she didn't want to admit it, but the fact that the blood-colored longsword surpassed the legendary level was an undeniable fact. But she couldn't understand how a perfect circle war immortal could revive such a divine artifact. She carried a stomach full of doubt and anger, as she turned into a ray of light, and flew towards the depths of the Ninth Heaven Palace. She escaped? The disciples looked at each other in dismay. The number one person on the Heaven leaderboard actually escaped? This was big news. If news of this were to spread, who knows how many jaws would drop? Qin Feiyang was also quite surprised. In his impression, Feng Zihan had always been a proud daughter of heaven who cared a lot about her self-esteem. Logically speaking, with so many people watching, she wouldn't do such a thing. It seems that no matter what kind of person, it was hard to overcome the fear of death. Chua. Coming back to his senses. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed coldly. He executed the walk formula and chased after her. Feng Zihan's escape was not good news to him. Because Feng Zihan's cultivation was much higher than his, and her speed was far from what he could compare to. As for the kill formula, ever since he broke through to the war immortal realm, it had changed. What it increased was not his cultivation, but the power of the blood-colored longsword. So, if Feng Zihan wanted to escape, it would be very difficult for him to catch up. Jiang Haotian. Suddenly, a shout rang out. The madman broke through the air and stood in front of Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang's spirit was shaken and said, "You came at the right time. Quickly help me chase after Feng Zihan." However, the madman turned a deaf ear and frowned. "What are you doing? Do you still need to ask?" Qin Feiyang said. The madman looked at Qin Feiyang gloomily and said, "Do you know what kind of consequences you will face if you kill her without evidence?" "I know. But what does that matter?" Qin Feiyang said indifferently. The madman's face was filled with anger as he shouted, "After getting rid of Feng Yuan, did you start to become arrogant?" "I became arrogant?" Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. The madman sighed deeply and said, "Stop, it's still not too late, just treat it as giving me face." Qin Feiyang looked at the madman and slowly understood, and said, "You came here to stop me from killing her, right?" The madman didn't admit it, but he didn't deny it either. Qin Feiyang said, "It seems that your feelings for Feng Zihan are not what you usually show." "Yes. I admit, I am indeed a little moved by her, so give me face, okay?" The madman said. "No." Qin Feiyang shook his head. The madman shouted, "Don't force me to attack you. You have seen the slaughter domain more than once, so you should know that as long as I activate it, even if you use all your trump cards, you won't be able to defeat me. So now you should get out of my way." Qin Feiyang said, a cold light flashing in his eyes. "Ha ha. What an arrogant fellow. Good, let me have a real taste of it." The madman laughed, and blood divine power surged out, and a huge barrier fell. "Blood demon domain? It's useless." Qin Feiyang shook his head, and with a slash, the blood demon domain was shattered. "Bastard! Are you serious? Do you believe that I won't expose your identity?" The madman shouted. "Do as you wish." Qin Feiyang looked at him indifferently, and then turned into a stream of light, passing by the madman and continuing to chase after Feng Zihan. And after being delayed by the madman, Feng Zihan had disappeared without a trace. "He's not afraid that I will expose his identity?" The madman scratched his head with a puzzled expression. "What's going on? Why does he seem to have become a person?" Qin Feiyang scanned the front and transmitted his voice. "Artifact spirit, hurry up and help me find Feng Zihan." "I can help you find her, but this sovereign can't do it." The artifact spirit's voice sounded in his mind. Qin Feiyang thought, "After opening the slaughter domain, do I still need you to do it? You just need to help me find her." "Okay," the artifact spirit responded. "Jiang Haotian, have you caused enough trouble?" But at this moment, another cold shout rang out. Shangguan Fenglan descended from the sky, and a terrifying pressure like a waterfall pressed down on Qin Feiyang. "Why do you all want to force me to hurt you?" Qin Feiyang was also enraged, and with a slash of his sword energy roared into the sky. That pressure couldn't be blocked at all. Puff! A wisp of sword energy entered Shangguan Fenglan's qi, and Shangguan Fenglan spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot, and a bloody hole appeared on her lower abdomen. What? Even Hall Master Shangguan can't block that blood sword. The shock in everyone's heart could no longer be described with words. And Shangguan Fenglan was also extremely shocked. How could it be so terrifying? Today Feng Zihan must die. No matter who comes, it's useless. Qin Feiyang left behind these words and flew away like a bolt of lightning. Shangguan Fenglan glanced at the blood-colored long sword in Qin Feiyang's hand, then looked at Madman and asked, "What exactly is that?" Although her qi was destroyed, her soul was still there. Relying on her divine sense, she could still stand and fly in the air. That's the slaughter domain. A very terrifying method. Once this slaughter domain appears, even if the old man appears, he won't be able to stop him. Madman sighed. So strong? Shangguan Fenglan was stunned. Found it. Front left. The artifact spirit's voice sounded. Qin Feiyang immediately rushed to the front left. Although he had been using the Xing formula, his speed was still too slow. Qin Feiyang secretly said, "Do you have a way to increase my speed?" "Yes. This venerable will come out and take you to chase her." "But this venerable just said that I can't appear." "There is a second way. Let this venerable control your body." The artifact spirit said. Control my body? Isn't that the same as possession? Qin Feiyang frowned. That's what it means, but it's not possession. In short, just like the inner demons, your consciousness can first return to the inner world, and let this venerable temporarily control your body. The artifact spirit said. So it's like this. Qin Feiyang muttered. The artifact spirit said again. If you're not at ease, just pretend that this venerable didn't say anything. Qin Feiyang was definitely not at ease. This kind of thing was definitely not a joke. After all, this artifact spirit was a heaven-defying artifact that was comparable to the ancient castle in Changshui. Why don't you come out? After catching up with Feng Zihan, you can return to my body. I believe that no one will find you. Qin Feiyang secretly said. Wrong. This venerable has already sensed that there is a pair of eyes secretly watching us. The artifact spirit said. What? Qin Feiyang was shocked. The artifact spirit said. This person's strength is very strong. And this venerable can feel that he is not near us, but far away. It seems that he has activated a kind of divine art that can spy on all things. Divine art? Qin Feiyang frowned. Suddenly his eyes trembled, and he secretly said, If I'm not wrong, it must be the Great Elder. The artifact spirit said. So this venerable can't go out, or it will bring disaster to you. This, Qin Feiyang was hesitant. Could he trust the artifact spirit? Actually, you don't have to be so wary of this venerable. Because if this venerable really wants to possess you, with this venerable's strength, you can't stop it at all. Moreover, you are this venerable's master now. As long as you want to, you can erase this venerable's consciousness. It's already like this. What are you still worried about? Can't we trust each other more? The artifact spirit said somewhat speechlessly. Chapter 2170. When Qin Feiyang heard this, he thought about it and agreed. Now that he was the owner of the castle, why should he be afraid of the artifact spirit? Okay. Let's trust each other more. Qin Feiyang thought to himself. Then he stopped in the air and entered his inner world. At the same time, the artifact spirit also entered his mind and took control of Qin Feiyang's body. Watch carefully. What is extreme speed? The artifact spirit said secretly. Without activating the Xing character art, he stepped into the air. However, his speed was dozens of times faster than Qin Feiyang's Xing character art. In less than 3 breaths, he saw Feng Zihan in front of him. When can I have such speed? Qin Feiyang was envious. But Feng Zihan, who was in front of him, was shocked. How could he catch up? This was impossible. How could a perfect divine warrior catch up with her, a perfect divine lord? But the man behind her was real. How did he do it? Whoosh. Another 3 breaths passed. The artifact spirit controlled Qin Feiyang's body, and in a flash, he appeared in front of Feng Zihan. Qin Feiyang immediately regained control of his physical body. Then, without saying a word, he slashed furiously with his blood-colored sword. What is going on? Looking at the blood-red sword that looked like the sword of the Grim Reaper, Feng Zihan could not help but feel despair. Whoosh! But just as Feng Zihan was about to die under the blood-red sword, an old man suddenly appeared, grabbed Feng Zihan, and flew away. Elder Yin! Qin Feiyang shouted. That's right. The old man who suddenly appeared was Yin Hui's master, Elder Yin. Old Yin did not even turn his head as he replied. Where it is possible to make mistakes, one should forgive them. What a joke! Why didn't she show mercy when she killed Gao Xiaowei and the other 2? Qin Feiyang roared and gave control of his body to the artifact spirit. Even Elder Yun's speed couldn't be compared to the artifact spirit's. Whoosh! After catching up to Elder Yun, the blood-colored sword left his hand. Like a divine rainbow, it pierced through the sky and attacked towards Elder Yun's back. Feng Zihan might not be responsible for the deaths of Gao Xiaowei and the others. Old Yun shouted. Cut the crap. If you want to protect her, then I'll kill you as well. Qin Feiyang shouted. Originally, it was a very simple matter. However, unexpectedly, Feng Zi, Shengguan Fenglan, and Elder Yun came out one after another to stop him. How dare you? Feng Yuan shouted angrily. Divine power surged out of his body and shot toward the blood-red sword. You will never know how terrifying this blood sword is. Qin Feiyang sneered. The blood-red longsword's sharpness was unparalleled as it crushed forward with irresistible force. Puff. One of Elder Yun's arms was chopped off by the blood-red longsword on the spot. Blood spurted out like a fountain. What? Elder Yun also turned pale with fright. I've said that no one can stop me today. Qin Feiyang smiled coldly. With a thought, the blood-red longsword turned in the air and attacked Feng Zihan, who was next to Elder Yun. Elder Yun's expression changed as he said in a deep voice, "She is now this old man's disciple. Please give this old man some face." Disciple? I'm sorry, no matter whose face it is, it won't work today. Qin Feiyang said domineeringly. The blood-red longsword had already arrived in front of Feng Zihan. Elder Yun's eyes were filled with anger as he pushed Feng Zihan away with a palm. The blood-red longsword slashed between the two of them. You want to save her like this? Naive. Qin Feiyang smiled disdainfully. The blood-red longsword turned in the air again, and with a poochie sound, it immediately sank into Feng Zihan's forehead. Blood spurted out like a fountain, and immediately after, Feng Zihan's head was shattered under the sharpness of the blood-red longsword. There was nothing left of his divine soul. It was completely annihilated. Zihan! Elder Yun roared hysterically. From this moment on, Feng Zihan, the number one on the heaven list, no longer exists. Qin Feiyang looked coldly at Feng Zihan, who was falling down. He said these words expressionlessly and turned to leave. Stop. Elder Yun growled. I don't want to hurt anyone except Feng Zihan. Don't force me, Qin Feiyang said without turning his head. Jiang Haotian. But at this moment, the great elder appeared out of thin air in front of the void, his old face full of anger. Qin Feiyang looked at the great elder and said, I don't want to explain, nor do I want to say anything more. Please step aside. Gao Xiaowei and the other two were killed. This old man can understand your feelings, but you can't kill Feng Zihan in public based on your personal guess. The great elder shouted. I said, I don't want to say anything more. Qin Feiyang said lightly and bypassed the great elder. Did this old man let you leave? The great elder said angrily. Then what do you want? Qin Feiyang stopped and asked. Before we find enough evidence to prove that Gao Xiaowei and the other two were killed by Feng Zihan, you must stay in prison, the great elder said in a deep voice. Prison? Qin Feiyang muttered and turned to look at the great elder. He shook his head and said, You really disappoint me. Impudent. The great elder shouted angrily. Whoosh. At this time, Madman and Shangguan Fenglan finally rushed over. When they saw Feng Zihan's body, their expressions changed. Madman said angrily, Jiang Haotian, you really killed her? Qin Feiyang looked at Madman and said, Would I joke with you about this kind of thing? You Madman glared at him. The great elder shouted, Shangguan Fenglan, immediately throw him into prison. Yes. Shangguan Fenglan respectfully replied. She had already expected this result. Qin Feiyang sighed, Great elder, you can't be so hypocritical. Shangguan Fenglan's expression changed and she shouted, Jiang Haotian, what did you say? More and more out of line? Did I say something wrong? He was clearly spying on us from the beginning, but why did he only appear after I killed Feng Zihan? It's actually very simple. Because I helped the deputy pavilion master and made him very dissatisfied, so he wanted to take this opportunity to take revenge on me. After Qin Feiyang finished speaking, he looked at the first elder and sneered. First elder, am I right? Nonsense. This old man has just received the news. The great elder said. Stop pretending. Your divine art that can secretly spy on others, although invisible and colorless, I can see through it. Qin Feiyang said. You can see through it. The great elder was shocked. Madman looked at Qin Feiyang and then at the great elder and asked, Old man, is it really like what he said? The great elder was stunned and said angrily, What? You'd rather believe him than this old man? Madman looked at Qin Feiyang and the great elder, unable to make a judgment for a while. Qin Feiyang looked at Madman and sighed. Don't do something that others don't know. Great elder, take care of yourself. Then he turned and left. The great elder clenched his hands and shouted at Shangguan Fenglan, Take him down. Shangguan Fenglan took a step forward and stood in front of Qin Feiyang saying, Don't make things difficult for me. Don't worry, I will do my best to find evidence that Feng Zihan killed Gao Xiaowei and the others. No need. These things are no longer important. I can't accept the Great Elder's actions. From this moment on, I am no longer a disciple of Nine Heavens Palace. Qin Feiyang took out his identity token. Then he exerted force in his hand, and the token shattered on the spot. Shangguan Fenglan was shocked. Madman also looked at Qin Feiyang in shock. The Great Elder and Old Yun also didn't expect that Qin Feiyang would betray Nine Heavens Palace. Shangguan Fenglan came back to her senses and hurriedly said, Jiang Haoyan, this matter hasn't reached this point yet, right? Qin Feiyang smiled and looked at Madman, cupping his hands. Thank you for taking care of me during this time. I won't forget. Madman wanted to say something but stopped. Let's meet again if fate wills it. Qin Feiyang smiled and took a step forward, directly walking past Madman. Madman sent a voice transmission. Do you know something? Who knows? Qin Feiyang shrugged. Madman turned to look at Qin Feiyang's back, his eyes flickering. Shangguan Fenglan, what are you waiting for? Take down this traitor. The Great Elder shouted. Enough. But at this moment Madman shouted. The Great Elder immediately glared at Madman. Madman sighed. Let him go. The Great Elder said angrily. What kind of bewitching potion did he give you? How long have you been together, and you're already so protective of him? I really don't want to say anything more. If you still recognize me as your grandson, let him go. Madman flew to Feng Zihan's side and silently looked at him for a while. Then he sighed, picked up Feng Zihan, and stepped into the air. Shangguan Fenglan looked at Madman, and then at Qin Feiyang's back. She looked at the Great Elder and asked, Great Elder, now this? Forget it, forget it. The Great Elder shouted angrily and disappeared as well. Shangguan Fenglan sighed and walked to Old Yun. Looking at his broken arm, she asked with concern, Are you okay? It's just a broken arm, I'm fine. Old Yun shook his head and then looked at Qin Feiyang, who was about to disappear from sight. But that Jiang Haoyan is too unbelievable. Yes. Just a strand of sword qi was enough to cripple my qi si. Now it even cut off one of your arms. That blood-red sword is so terrifying that it makes people despair. Shangguan Fenglan said. Not only that. He was obviously merciful before, otherwise it wouldn't be this arm that was cut off. It would be this old man's head. Recalling the scene, Old Yun couldn't help but feel his scalp tingle. You go back and rest first. I'll go comfort the disciples. Now the entire Nine Heaven Palace is in chaos. Shangguan Fenglan shook her head, turned around, and flew away. Inner gate. Seeing Qin Feiyang fly over, Mu Tianyang, who was standing in the crowd, asked, Are you leaving now? Yes. Qin Feiyang secretly replied. Mu Tianyang secretly said, Then what about the Nine Heaven Palace's soul line? I'm not interested. Qin Feiyang secretly said. Mu Tianyang wasn't surprised at all, and said, You're not interested, but I am. I just want to ask you, will you stop me when the time comes? No. If you can get it, then that's your ability. Qin Feiyang said. I'm waiting for you to say that. When you go to the Sky Dragon Sea, remember to inform me. Mu Tianyang secretly laughed. Okay. Take care. Qin Feiyang secretly said. Then flew towards the stairway to heaven without looking back. Chapter 2171. Brother Jiang, where are you going? But they hadn't gone far when Hui hurriedly chased after them. He looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, Aren't you busy in the resource hall? Qin Feiyang was surprised. With such a big thing happening, how can I be in the mood to care about the resource hall? Hui sighed. The resource hall's affairs are not for others to meddle in. Now that Feng Yuan isn't here, as the Vice Palace Master's disciple, you have to shoulder this burden and manage everything. Qin Feiyang said. Why does it sound like you're saying your last words? Hui looked at Qin Feiyang in shock. Scram. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes and continued to fly towards the sky stairway. Wait. You haven't answered my question yet. Hui hurriedly said. I'm no longer a disciple of Nine Heavens Palace, so of course I'm leaving Nine Heavens Palace, Qin Feiyang said without turning his head. What? Huoyi was stunned and said, Why? Is the Great Elder making things difficult for you? Don't worry, I'll go find him now. It has nothing to do with the Great Elder. Don't worry about me, just manage the resource hall well, and let me leave. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and smiled. What's going on? Huoyi frowned. A moment later, Qin Feiyang finally arrived at the sky stairway. Looking back at Nine Heavens Palace, his heart was filled with emotions. Although he didn't have a sense of belonging to Nine Heavens Palace, there were too many unforgettable things that happened in Nine Heavens Palace. Taking a deep breath, Qin Feiyang shouted, I, Jiang Haoyan, hereby announce that I'm officially leaving Nine Heavens Palace and have nothing to do with Nine Heavens Palace from now on. His voice was like a bell, resounding through the clouds. What? He's leaving Nine Heavens Palace? What's going on? Is it related to killing Feng Zihan? Hearing Qin Feiyang's voice, almost all the disciples looked in the direction of the sky stairway, their faces filled with shock. Nine Heaven Palace was the holy land of cultivation in the northern region. As a member of Nine Heavens Palace, not only did they have a better cultivation environment and resources than others, it was also a supreme honor. For the sake of entering the Nine Heavens Palace, it was unknown how many people had fought to the death. It was also unknown how many people had lost their lives in the test. But today, this person actually wanted to leave the Nine Heavens Palace of his own accord? This was the first time in history. Law Enforcement Hall. Wang Yun stood beside Shengguan Fenglan and whispered, Is there really no turning back? When he was preparing to kill Feng Zihan, he had probably already made his decision. Besides, even if he wants to stay now, the First Elder will not allow it. Shengguan Fenglan said. What a pity. Wang Yun sighed. Yeah. In the future, this kid will definitely become a great talent. It's a pity that it has no fate with our Nine Heavens Palace. Shengguan Fenglan shook her head. Back to Qin Feiyang. At this moment, he walked down the stairway to heaven step by step. Scenes of the past kept flashing through his mind. Although he hadn't stayed in this place for long, he had left behind many memories. And these memories would forever be covered in dust. Because in the future he might never step into the Nine Heavens Palace again. Madman, thank you. After Qin Feiyang walked down the stairway to heaven, he looked at the Nine Heavens Palace above and muttered in a low voice. Without hesitation, he opened a teleportation altar. The reason why he repeatedly thanked Madman was because he had taken care of him during this period. It could be said that, if it wasn't for Madman's protection, the situation would definitely be different. As a person, one must know how to be grateful. Of course, he also knew that Madman taking care of him was definitely related to his ancestor. Although he didn't know what happened between Madman and his ancestor, he could imagine that the relationship between the two was definitely not ordinary. Have you really thought it through? Just as Qin Feiyang stepped onto the altar, the white-haired old man suddenly opened his eyes and looked at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang was taken aback and turned to look at the white-haired old man. There was a wise light in the white-haired old man's eyes, as if he could see through his heart. Farewell. Qin Feiyang didn't reply. He cupped his hands and bowed before quickly disappearing. Your departure is indeed a good thing for the Nine Heavens Palace. Your path has just begun, work hard. The white-haired old man murmured, a rare smile appearing on his face. What? Jiang Haoyan betrayed the Nine Heavens Palace? How is that possible? How is it not possible? My cousin is an outer disciple of the Nine Heavens Palace. He just sent me a message saying that he personally heard Jiang Haoyan announce that he left the Nine Heavens Palace. Is there something wrong with his head? I dream of entering the Nine Heavens Palace, but this person actually left on his own accord? Did he say why he left? I don't know. But according to my cousin, it seems to be related to Feng Zihan. Feng Zihan? Yes. Not long ago, Jiang Haoyan held a blood sword and attacked Feng Zihan in front of everyone. Even Shengguan Fenglan's qi was destroyed by him. It can't be right? Shengguan Fenglan is the hall master of the Nine Heavens Palace's Law Enforcement Hall. How could her Qi be destroyed by a disciple of the Nine Heavens Palace? It's true, countless disciples saw it with their own eyes. Then what about Feng Zihan? I heard that he's also dead, and his body seems to have been taken away by a lunatic. Damn, that's amazing. The news quickly spread from the Nine Heavens Palace, and everyone was discussing it. The treasure pavilion. In the study. He left the Nine Heavens Palace? Shang Guanqiu suddenly stood up and looked at the guard standing in front of him, his face full of shock. Yes. The guard nodded. What is this guy doing? No, I have to ask my sister. Shang Guanqiu muttered and took out the image crystal. Isn't it just leaving the Nine Heavens Palace? Is there a need to make such a fuss? But at this moment, a faint laugh sounded, following which, a young man in white appeared out of thin air in the study. It was Qin Feiyang. Greetings, young Master Jiang. The guard's pupils shrank and he quickly bowed. He had seen Qin Feiyang before, and he was very respectful to Qin Feiyang, but this respect was all because of Shang Guanqiu. But it was different now. Even Shangguan Fenglan's sea of qi was destroyed. One could imagine how terrifying this humble and easygoing young man's means were. No need to be so polite. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. How can you still smile? Shang Guanqiu raised his eyebrows and waved at the guard, saying, You can leave now. Yes. The guard responded respectfully, then turned and walked out quickly, closing the door behind him. Shang Guanqiu retracted his gaze and looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously, asking, Why did you leave the Nine Heavens Palace? Qin Feiyang sat by the tea table and smiled, saying, Of course it's because of you. Because of me? Shang Guanqiu was stunned. Yes. You've been so good to me, so I have to repay you. So I left the Nine Heavens Palace and planned to settle down in the treasure school. Qin Feiyang said. Shang Guanqiu was shocked and frowned, saying, You must be joking. Do I look like I'm joking? I'm really here to repay you. Why don't you welcome me in the treasure school? Qin Feiyang said. Welcome, welcome. Of course you're welcome. Shang Guanqiu nodded repeatedly. Then it seems that I don't have to be homeless anymore. Qin Feiyang laughed. Even if you don't come to the treasure school, with your current reputation, you have a place to go. Shang Guanqiu rolled his eyes and sat opposite Qin Feiyang, sizing up Qin Feiyang while making tea. There was one sentence that she was very concerned about. Was it really because of her that this person left the Nine Heavens Palace and went to the treasure school? That's impossible. She knew best what she was capable of. It was impossible for her to be so influential. Wait. Could it be that this man in front of her had taken a liking to her? Gurgle. The water in the teapot boiled. But Shang Guanqiu seemed to have not seen it. She was in a daze. Qin Feiyang waved his hand in front of Shang Guanqiu's eyes and said, Hey, the water is boiling. What are you thinking about? It's boiling? Shang Guanqiu quivered and looked down at the teapot. It was boiling. Then she hurriedly took out the tea leaves and started to make tea. Like the boiling tea, her cheeks couldn't help but heat up. Qin Feiyang looked at Shang Guanqiu suspiciously and said, Why are you acting so strange? Even your face is red. Am I? No. Shang Guanqiu shook her head in panic. Not yet. It's almost like the bottom of a hot pot. Qin Feiyang was speechless. Ha! Shang Guanqiu laughed dryly and felt annoyed. What was she thinking? How was this possible? She finally calmed down and poured a cup of tea. She pushed it in front of Qin Feiyang and said, Are you really here to join the treasure school? It was too sudden. She could not accept it. Qin Feiyang picked up the teacup and sniffed it. He smiled and said, It's the deputy pavilion master's tea leaves again. After that, he tasted the tea leisurely. Shang Guanqiu said angrily, I'm asking you a question. Qin Feiyang looked at Shang Guanqiu. He only put down the teacup after finishing the tea. He looked at Shang Guanqiu and shook his head in amusement. He said, You're too funny. It's just a joke. How could you take it seriously? A joke? Shang Guanqiu was stunned. She was furious. After all this time, he was just teasing her. Okay. I won't tease you anymore. Qin Feiyang held back his laughter and said, Actually, I'm here to ask you for a favor. You're kidding again. Shen Guanqiu snorted. This time, she could not believe his nonsense. I'm really not. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Shen Guanqiu looked at Qin Feiyang for a while. Seeing that Qin Feiyang was not teasing her, she asked suspiciously, "What's the matter?" "It's about the highest heaven palace. I want to beg the treasure school to be merciful and lift the ban on the highest heaven palace," Qin Feiyang said. What? Shen Guanqiu was shocked. He was pleading for the highest heaven palace? Haven't you left the highest heaven palace? Why are you still meddling in the highest heaven palace's affairs? Shen Guanqiu looked at Qin Feiyang in confusion. Personal reasons. Just tell me, can you do it or not? Qin Feiyang said. No. Shen Guanqiu shook her head and said without even thinking. Qin Feiyang frowned. Don't blame me, because this is not something I can decide. And you know why the treasure school banned the highest heaven palace. Let me put it this way. If the first elder does not come to the treasure school in person and apologize to the deputy pavilion leader, the ban will never be lifted, Shen Guanqiu said. Chapter 2172. The great elder came to apologize. Qin Feiyang murmured and shook his head. I'm afraid that's impossible. Let's see what he thinks. Although the overall strength of the Ninth Heaven Palace is not inferior to the Treasure Pavilion, in terms of resources, if the Treasure Pavilion does not give in, the Ninth Heaven Palace will lose more than a little, Shen Guanqiu said. Qin Feiyang smiled. Aren't you afraid of angering your sister by helping the Treasure Pavilion? My sister won't be angry. After all, we serve different masters, and we're good sisters in private. But you, I really don't understand. Since you've already left the Ninth Heaven Palace, why are you still helping them? Shen Guanqiu frowned. I've said that this is a personal reason, and it's not convenient for me to disclose. And I also believe that nothing is absolute in this world. Qin Feiyang smiled confidently as he stood up and walked towards the desk. What are you doing? Shen Guanqiu looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. Sit down first, you'll know later. Qin Feiyang smiled, walked to the desk and glanced at it. There were writing brushes, ink paper, and inkstone on it. Qin Feiyang grabbed 3 blank pieces of paper, dipped the brush in ink, and wrote quickly. After a while, on the 3 blank pieces of paper, there were lines of small words. Finally, Qin Feiyang grabbed the 3 pieces of paper, blew the ink on them dry, and then returned to the coffee table, took out one of them and handed it to Shen Guanqiu. Shen Guanqiu took the paper suspiciously and looked down. Soon, a trace of excitement crept up her face. Then, she looked at the other 2 pieces of paper in Qin Feiyang's hand, her eyes full of desire. That's right. On these 3 pieces of paper are the recipes for the 9 Transformation Dragon Blood Elixir, 9 Chu Yellow Dragon Elixir, and 4 Elephants Infinite Divine Elixir. And I can give these 3 elixir recipes to the Treasure Pavilion, Qin Feiyang said. Give them to us. Shen Guanqiu could not help but be excited. She asked, What's your condition? Qin Feiyang said, You should be able to figure it out. Shen Guanqiu frowned. Lift the ban on the 9 Heaven Palace? Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. Shen Guanqiu asked, Why are you helping the 9 Heavens Palace? You didn't even hesitate to give up these pill formulas that you care about? I've already said this before. Can you stop asking? Qin Feiyang was getting impatient. All right. I won't ask. However, I still have to ask the Vice Pavilion Master and Master about this, Shen Guanqiu said. All right. Qin Feiyang nodded. Wait a moment. Shen Guanqiu got up, put down the prescription in his hand, and quickly walked out of the study. Qin Dage, do you really want to do this? After Shen Guanqiu left, Fire Lotus's voice rang in Qin Feiyang's mind. Qin Feiyang sighed. This is the only thing I can do for the 9 Heavens Palace now. Fire Lotus said, but the Grand Elder's attitude. Although he's the Grand Elder of the 9 Heavens Palace, he can't represent the entire 9 Heavens Palace. And I'm not helping him. I'm helping the 9 Heavens Palace. Qin Feiyang thought to himself. All right. Since you've already made up your mind, I won't say anything more. I just hope that the Grand Elder can understand your efforts. Fire Lotus said. I don't need anyone to understand. I just need to feel at ease. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Fire Lotus sighed. If only the Grand Elder had your magnanimity and magnanimity. Everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses. The Grand Elder may be arrogant, but his loyalty to the Nine Heavens Palace is unquestionable. Qin Feiyang said. You're still speaking up for him. I really have to hand it to you. Fire Lotus was speechless. Qin Feiyang smiled. Creak. At this moment, the door opened. Two figures walked in hurriedly. One was Shengguan Qiu. The other was the Vice Pavilion Master. Qin Feiyang looked over and quickly stood up. Greetings, old senior. No need to be so polite. The Vice Pavilion Master waved his hand and walked over to Qin Feiyang, smiling. Please take a seat. Qin Feiyang returned to his seat and smiled. I didn't expect you to come personally. You've already taken out such a valuable pill formula. If I don't come personally, wouldn't it be rude of the Treasure Pavilion? The Vice Pavilion Master said. Qin Feiyang asked directly, what do you think, old senior? To be honest, you've done me a favor. Even if you don't take out the pill formula, I should give you face and lift the ban. But you've seen it with your own eyes. The Great Elder's attitude this time is really not something that ordinary people can tolerate. The Vice Pavilion Master said. I can understand. Qin Feiyang nodded. Actually, I've already made up my mind. No matter who comes to plead on my behalf, I won't lift the ban. I didn't expect you to come either. Because in my impression, you've always been a reasonable person who can distinguish right from wrong. So it's impossible that you'll come to me. And you even took out 3 pill formulas. Previously, little Qiu has already told me that you don't want to reveal the reason, but I still can't help but want to ask why. The Vice Pavilion Master looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. Qin Feiyang said, one day in the future you'll know the reason. It seems that even my face won't work. The Vice Pavilion Master shook his head and laughed. Qin Feiyang said, please forgive me, old senior. All right, if you don't want to say, I won't force you. As for the ban, the Vice Pavilion Master pondered for a moment and said, my young friend has already made such a condition. If I still don't agree, won't I be the same as the Great Elder? Thank you, old senior. Qin Feiyang hurriedly bowed and thanked him. The Vice Pavilion Master smiled and turned to look at Shengguan Qiu. Little Qiu, go and make the arrangements. Yes. Shengguan Qiu responded respectfully and turned to leave quickly. Qin Feiyang also handed the 3 pill formulas to the Vice Pavilion Master. The Vice Pavilion Master looked at them carefully and nodded with a smile. I'll accept the pill formulas without hesitation. And I won't forget your kindness in helping me clear my name. As long as the ban is lifted, this kindness will be repaid. Qin Feiyang said. The Vice Pavilion Master was stunned and frowned. You've done so much? Is it worth it? I know very well whether it's worth it or not. Qin Feiyang smiled. I'm appreciating you more and more. How about this? Since you've already left Ninth Heaven Palace, why don't you join the Treasure Pavilion? As long as you join the Treasure Pavilion, I promise you that I won't restrict you in any way. You can do whatever you want. And you can use the resources of the Treasure Pavilion as you wish. The Vice Pavilion Master said. Qin Feiyang was stunned and smiled bitterly. I'm just a perfect war god. Is it worth it for you to do so much for me? The Vice Pavilion Master smiled. As you said, I know very well whether it's worth it or not. Your conditions are really tempting. But I'm used to being lazy. And if I join the Treasure Pavilion now, the Great Elder will be even more dissatisfied with you. And the people outside will talk behind my back. They might even say that I'm a spy that the Treasure Pavilion planted in Ninth Heaven Palace. This kind of rumor is not beneficial to me, you, or the Treasure Pavilion. Qin Feiyang said. You've even considered this. Young friend, you're really meticulous. All right, everyone has their own ambitions. I won't force you. As long as you remember, the doors of the Treasure Pavilion are always open for you. The Vice Pavilion Master smiled. Thank you, senior. Qin Feiyang said. Outside, Shengguan Qiu's order caused an uproar in Sky Dragon City. Why is the ban on Ninth Heaven Palace suddenly lifted? Do any of you know what's going on? Did the Great Elder come to apologize? But it doesn't seem possible. How could a person like the Great Elder lower his head to the treasure pavilion? But if it's not the Great Elder, who could it be? Who has such a big face to make the treasure pavilion lift the ban on Ninth Heaven Palace? Everyone was talking about it. When the news reached Ninth Heaven Palace, the disciples of Ninth Heaven Palace were in an uproar. This is good news. The ban is finally lifted. Everyone was happy. A resource hall. Looking at the disciples coming in and out and listening to their discussion, Huai was also puzzled. But Mu Tianyang had his head lowered, busy with the things in his hands, and did not pay attention to it at all. Huai looked at Mu Tianyang and said, "Brother Mu, why aren't you surprised at all?" Mu Tianyang shook his head and smiled. "What's there to be surprised about?" "Wait. What do you mean? Did you know that the treasure pavilion would lift the ban on us?" Huai frowned. "I didn't know. But it's not surprising," Mu Tianyang said. "Can you say it clearly?" Huai stared at Mu Tianyang angrily. Mu Tianyang raised his head and looked at Huai, shaking his head. "If you want to know the truth, ask our old friend." "Old friend?" Huai was stunned and said in surprise. "You mean Jiang Haotian?" "Who else could it be?" Mu Tianyang smiled. At the same time, deep in the Ninth Heaven Palace, Shangguan Fenglan hurriedly ran into a courtyard. In the courtyard, the first elder sat in front of the flower bed, looking extremely gloomy. Shangguan Fenglan walked up to the first elder and said with a smile, "I knew you wouldn't sit back and do nothing." The first elder was stunned and looked at Shangguan Fenglan in confusion. "What do you mean sit back and do nothing?" "It's the ban on us by the treasure pavilion. If you didn't come forward, would they have lifted the ban on us?" Shangguan Fenglan said. "Lifted the ban?" The first elder was stunned and stood up asking, "When did this happen?" Shangguan Fenglan smiled and said, "Can you stop pretending?" "Pretending? I really don't know," the first elder said. "You don't know?" Shangguan Fenglan looked at Qin Feiyang in shock. The first elder shook his head. Shangguan Fenglan was stunned and asked again, "It really wasn't you?" "No," the first elder said. "If it wasn't you, then why did the treasure pavilion lift the ban on us?" Shangguan Fenglan was confused. She thought that the first elder secretly went to the treasure pavilion and apologized to the deputy pavilion master, so the treasure pavilion lifted the ban. But she didn't expect that the first elder didn't go at all. Then who was it that made the treasure pavilion lift the ban? Chapter 2173. The outside was bustling with activity. In the study of the treasure pavilion, the aroma of tea filled the air. Qin Feiyang and the deputy pavilion master sat opposite each other, enjoying tea and chatting like old friends. Shangguan Qiu returned to the study and walked to the deputy pavilion master. He said respectfully, "I've asked someone to put up a notice." "Good." The deputy pavilion master nodded and smiled. "Tell the waiter of Yulan restaurant to prepare a banquet. Today, I want to drink and chat with you." "Yes." Shangguan Qiu replied respectfully. "No need, no need." Qin Feiyang quickly called Shangguan Qiu out. He looked at the deputy pavilion master and smiled. "Drinking tea is better than drinking wine." The deputy pavilion master was stunned. He laughed and said, "It's rare to see a young man who doesn't drink." Qin Feiyang said, "It's not that I don't drink. I just feel that it's not as comfortable as drinking tea." "That's true. Drinking wine is bad for the body. Drinking tea is good for health." "It seems that I hit it off with you." The deputy pavilion master smiled. Qin Feiyang smiled and glanced at the deputy pavilion master's leg. "Elder, I heard you say that the bone-corroding spirit silk in your body hasn't been removed yet?" "Yes." The deputy pavilion master nodded. "How can I remove it completely? Once it's removed, will your leg be able to recover?" Qin Feiyang asked. The deputy pavilion master said, "Removing the bone-corroding spirit silk can indeed recover. But only the first elder can remove the poison completely." "First elder?" Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. "You don't have to worry about this. I'll find a way to get him to give me the antidote." The deputy pavilion master smiled. "All right." Qin Feiyang nodded. He picked up the teacup and took a sip. He looked up at Shangguan Qiu and said, I remember that I refined 94 symbols infinite divine pills for you the first time. The second time, I refined 563 pills. Yes. A total of 653 pills. 3 pills have been auctioned. There are 650 pills left. Why did you suddenly mention this? Shen Guanqiu asked. Can you give me the 654 symbols infinite divine pellets in advance? Qin Feiyang said. Give it to you in advance? Shen Guanqiu was stunned and said, but it hasn't been sold yet. I know it hasn't been auctioned off yet, but you can appraise it in advance and give me the soul stone, Qin Feiyang said. This, Shen Guanqiu hesitated. The assistant pavilion master looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously and asked, Are you in urgent need of soul stones? It's not that urgent. Maybe I will disappear for a while, so I want to get these soul stones in advance, Qin Feiyang said. Disappear? Where are you going? Shen Guanqiu was surprised. Qin Feiyang said, I haven't decided yet. Then why don't you stay in the treasure pavilion for now? Shen Guanqiu looked at him expectantly. I've already told you about this before. Staying in the treasure pavilion won't bring any benefits to it, Qin Feiyang said. Shen Guanqiu frowned and turned to look at the assistant pavilion master, feeling a little disappointed. The assistant pavilion master nodded with a smile and said, You can appraise it and give him the soul stone. How should I appraise it? Shen Guanqiu was in a dilemma. It was hard to estimate the price of an item in an auction. Sometimes it was high, sometimes it was low, and it was different every time. The assistant pavilion master asked, What were the prices of the 3 pills in the last auction? The first one 1 billion. But it was sold at such a high price because Frenzy and Feng Zihan were fighting. The second one, 400 million. It was sold at such a high price because Mu Tianyang and Yu Zijie were fighting. And the third one, only 200 million. Shen Guanqiu said honestly. 200 million. The assistant pavilion master thought for a while and said, 200 million soul stones should be the real price of the 4 symbols infinite divine pill. I think so too. Shen Guanqiu nodded. The assistant pavilion master smiled and said, Let's use 200 million soul stones. This. Then it can be sold at 200 million in the future. Shen Guanqiu said hurriedly. The assistant pavilion master said unhappily, Little brother has already given the pill formula to us. Do you still care about the soul stones? Shen Guanqiu smiled helplessly and said, Okay, we'll do as you say. I'll calculate it now. Okay. The assistant pavilion master nodded. Shen Guanqiu immediately went to the desk and started calculating. The assistant pavilion master picked up the teacup and tasted it. Suddenly he thought of something and asked, Little brother, are you still going to the Sky Dragon Sea? Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. The assistant pavilion master said, Seems like there's something you want in the Sky Dragon Sea. You can say that. Qin Feiyang smiled. Although the assistant pavilion master was a good person, there were some things that had to be kept a secret. After interacting with you for a few times, I've learned a thing or two about your character. As long as it's something you've decided on, no one can persuade you otherwise. So I won't say much. I just want to say that you must try your best to survive. The assistant pavilion master said. Thank you for your concern. I'll keep it in mind. Qin Feiyang smiled. It's done. At this moment, Shen Guanqiu walked over and looked at Qin Feiyang. 654 symbols infinite divine pills. According to the calculation of 200 million per pill, the total is 130 billion. Splitting it in half, it's 65 billion. So much. Qin Feiyang was surprised. Not really, he had no idea. After calculating, the number was really shocking. However, Mu Tianyang still had one share. 65 billion. In other words, he could only get 32.5 billion. Shen Guanqiu looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, Do you want it now? Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. Shen Guanqiu looked at the assistant pavilion master. The assistant pavilion master asked, Are there enough soul stones in the treasury? Yes, of course. It's just that taking out 65 billion in one go is really painful. Shen Guanqiu smiled bitterly. The assistant pavilion master laughed and said, You'll have to give it out sooner or later. Why are you feeling bad? Go. Yes. Sheng Guanqiu responded and quickly left. This girl. The assistant pavilion master shook his head and looked at Qin Feiyang. He smiled and asked, Little brother, what do you think of this girl? Smart, capable, and beautiful. Very good. Qin Feiyang said. Yes. Since she took over as the supervisor of the treasure pavilion, the pavilion master and I have been hands-off managers. She's been in charge of everything. We've never had to worry about her. To be honest, the treasure pavilion can't do without her now. The assistant pavilion master smiled, his face full of relief. Qin Feiyang said, Although she's very capable, it's also because you have good taste. The vice pavilion master let out a sigh and said, What a pity. What's a pity? Qin Feiyang was puzzled. It's also because she's too strong that many men stay away from her. Of course. She has her reasons too. She has too high a standard. The assistant pavilion master sighed. Too high a standard? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Why did this sound a little strange? She's not young anymore, but until now, she hasn't found anyone she likes. The pavilion master and I are very anxious. The assistant pavilion master said. Qin Feiyang was stunned. What did it have to do with him whether Sheng Guanqiu likes someone or not? Why did he say this to him? Wait a minute. Was the assistant pavilion master trying to set him up with Sheng Guanqiu in disguise? Little brother, actually the pavilion master and I have heard the rumors outside. According to our observation, Miss Qiu's attitude towards you is indeed different from others. You see. The assistant pavilion master laughed. Qin Feiyang hurriedly waved his hand and said, Elder, this is not a joke. I'm already so old. How can I still have the energy to joke? To be honest, little brother, the pavilion master and I have always treated her as our own daughter. She might even be the next pavilion master's successor. In other words, whoever marries Miss Qiu will be the son-in-law of the pavilion master and I. In the future, the entire treasure pavilion will be his backer. The assistant pavilion master said. Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly and said, Elder, you're tempting me. Can you resist this temptation? The assistant pavilion master looked at him with a smile. When it comes to love, both parties are in love. If you really like the other party, you won't care about the other party's status and background. Qin Feiyang said. Well said. The assistant pavilion master nodded. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, I also sincerely hope that Sheng Guanqiu can find someone who is truly worthy of her lifelong commitment. The assistant pavilion master was stunned. He looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, Are you rejecting her? You really want to set her up? Qin Feiyang said helplessly. The assistant pavilion master smiled embarrassedly and said, Do you think I'm a little old and frivolous? No. Qin Feiyang waved his hand. To be honest, I'm really satisfied with you. And you and Miss Qiu are both very outstanding young people. If you two can be together, it will be a perfect pair. In the future, it will be of great help to your growth and Miss Qiu's career. The assistant pavilion master said. Thank you for your kindness, Elder. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. The assistant pavilion master frowned and said, You really don't like Miss Qiu? No. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Why? The assistant pavilion master was puzzled. Qin Feiyang said, Because I already have someone I like. I see. The assistant pavilion master nodded and said with a smile, I thought you didn't like Miss Qiu. How is that possible? Only a blind man wouldn't like such a beautiful and capable woman. Qin Feiyang said. All right then. This kind of thing depends on fate. It can't be forced. The assistant pavilion master laughed. Sheng Guanqiu pushed the door open and entered. Looking at Qin Feiyang and the assistant pavilion master, he asked curiously, What are you talking about? You look so happy. Nothing. The assistant pavilion master waved his hand. Sheng Guanqiu looked at the two of them suspiciously. He took out an interspatial ring and handed it to Qin Feiyang, saying, 650. Not one more, not one less. Qin Feiyang looked at it for a while, and then kept it. Aren't you going to count it? Sheng Guanqiu asked in surprise. Are you going to lie to me? Qin Feiyang asked in return. Who knows? Sheng Guanqiu looked at Qin Feiyang mockingly. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled. He looked at the assistant pavilion master and said, Elder, there is one more thing I want to ask you. What is it? The assistant pavilion master said. Dragons. Qin Feiyang said word by word. Hearing the two words dragons, the assistant pavilion master and Sheng Guanqiu's faces darkened. Even their breathing became heavy. Chapter 2174. Qin Feiyang bowed and said, Senior, please tell me about the dragons. Then answer me first. Why do you want to know about the dragons? The vice pavilion master asked. Qin Feiyang was silent. If you don't tell me, I won't tell you. The vice pavilion master said. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. He gritted his teeth and said, Okay, I'll tell you. Actually, I have a grudge against the dragons. What? The vice pavilion master stood up. Sheng Guanqiu was also shocked. He had a grudge against the dragons? The vice pavilion master asked. You're asking about the dragons because you want to take revenge on the dragons? Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. Then I can't tell you, because the strength of the dragon race is enough to crush you to pieces. The vice pavilion master said. Qin Feiyang said, I know myself well. I won't look for the dragons before I have absolute confidence. The dragons are existences you can't afford to offend. Even the treasure pavilion and ninth heaven palace dare not provoke them, let alone you. I'm not telling you for your own good. The vice pavilion master said earnestly. I know you're doing this for my own good. But I really want to know about the dragons. Please help me. As Qin Feiyang spoke, he took the opportunity to kneel on the ground. The vice pavilion master's expression changed. He quickly landed in front of Qin Feiyang and grabbed Qin Feiyang. You're my benefactor. You can't kneel. Qin Feiyang said. Please help me. You silly boy. The vice pavilion master glared at him and said, Sit down. I'll tell you. Thank you, senior. Qin Feiyang smiled gratefully. The vice pavilion master returned to his seat, took a sip of tea and said, Actually, the dragons are part of the Divine Dragon clan. I've already expected that. Qin Feiyang said. The deputy pavilion master asked. Then do you know how many dragons there are? Qin Feiyang shook his head. Too many to count. And there are all kinds of divine dragons. For example, gold dragon, black dragon, white dragon, silver dragon, water dragon, ice dragon, fire dragon, sword dragon, sky dragon, etc. Every single one of them is extremely powerful, especially the ancestral dragons of the various races. The vice pavilion master said. Ancestral dragon. Qin Feiyang was shocked. These two words were not unfamiliar to him at all. Yes. Dragons are a huge race. Every race has an ancestral dragon. With the ancestral dragon's strength, it's no exaggeration to say that even this old man would be killed instantly. The vice pavilion master said in a deep voice. Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled. Was he that strong? I'm not trying to scare you. And above the ancestral dragons, there is an even more powerful divine dragon. This divine dragon is called the Dragon Sovereign by the dragons. It is this dragon sovereign who controls the entire dragon clan. Even those ancestral dragons have to listen to him. The vice pavilion master said. Dragon sovereign, Qin Feiyang muttered and asked. Is there a purple gold divine dragon among the dragons? Purple gold divine dragon? The vice pavilion master was taken aback and shook his head. I haven't heard of it, but I don't know whether there is one or not. Only the dragons themselves know. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and said, Where do the dragons reside? Divine Land. The vice pavilion master said. Divine Land? Qin Feiyang was surprised. There were a total of 5 regions in the ancient realm. Dongling, Western Desert, Northern Region, Southern Wilderness, and the last one was Divine Land. Yes, Divine Land is a very special place. Not only is it rich in talents and resources, but it is also full of powerhouses. My cultivation can only be considered average in the Divine Prefecture, said Yi Futian. The vice pavilion master said. This, Qin Feiyang was shocked. The vice pavilion master was a top powerhouse in the northern region, but in Divine Land, He was only average. Let's put it this way. The overall strength of Divine Land is stronger than Dongling, Western Desert, Northern Region, and Southern Wilderness combined. And the dragons are the strongest in Divine Land. It is not an exaggeration to say that they are the rulers of Divine Land, the Vice Pavilion Master said. Qin Feiyang was dumbfounded. He did not expect the dragons to be so strong. No wonder the Vice Pavilion Master did not want to tell him. With his current cultivation, he would be courting death if he went to find the dragons. After a long while, Qin Feiyang calmed down and asked, "Are there humans in Divine Land?" "Of course. But in Divine Land, we humans have a very low status. We are even ruled by the dragons," the Vice Pavilion Master said. Ruled by the dragons. Qin Feiyang's heart was in turmoil. It was far beyond his imagination. The Vice Pavilion Master said with a smile, "To be honest, the Treasure Pavilion's General Pavilion is in Divine Land, and we have a place in Divine Land." "The General Pavilion is in Divine Land?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. "Yes, otherwise, why do you think the Ninth Heaven Palace is so afraid of the Treasure Pavilion?" the Vice Pavilion Master said. Qin Feiyang was surprised. "Doesn't that mean that the Treasure Pavilion is all over the ancient world?" "Yes. But compared to the dragons, the Treasure Pavilion is still a long way behind." The Vice Pavilion Master sighed. Qin Feiyang asked, "Have you been to Divine Land?" "No. Divine Land is ruled by the dragons. Only the dragons can enter Divine Land at will. And if the people of the Treasure Pavilion want to go to the General Pavilion of Divine Land, or if the General Pavilion of Divine Land comes to the Northern Region, they have to get the permission of the dragons in advance," the Vice Pavilion Master said. Qin Feiyang said, "I didn't expect us humans to have such a low status in Divine Land." "Yes. No matter where we are, we humans are the rulers, but in Divine Land, we can only be described as small and humble. Now you understand how strong the dragons are, right?" the Vice Pavilion Master sighed. "Understood." Qin Feiyang nodded. The Vice Pavilion Master said, "Although this old man doesn't know why you have a grudge with the dragons, you must not be impulsive. This junior will bear that in mind." After Qin Feiyang finished speaking, he asked, "Where exactly is the Divine Land?" The Vice Pavilion Master said, "Divine Land is in the center of the Heavenly Dragon Sea." "The center of the Heavenly Dragon Sea?" Qin Feiyang was surprised. "Yes. The size of the Heavenly Dragon Sea is beyond your imagination. Dongling, the Western Desert, the Northern Region, and the Southern Wilderness are located in the four directions of the Heavenly Dragon Sea, and our Northern Region is the north of the Heavenly Dragon Sea. In short, our four regions surround the Heavenly Dragon Sea and Divine Land," the Vice Pavilion Master said. Qin Feiyang said, "That is to say, Divine Land is located in the center of the ancient world." "That's right." The Vice Pavilion Master nodded. Qin Feiyang said, "Doesn't the Heavenly Dragon Sea run through the entire ancient world?" "You can say that. The Heavenly Dragon Sea connects Dongling, the Western Desert, the Northern Region, the Southern Wilderness, and Divine Land. Although the people of our four regions all call it the Heavenly Dragon Sea, the people of Divine Land have different names. For example, the Heavenly Dragon Sea in our Northern Region is called the North Sea. The Western Desert is called the West Sea. The Dongling side is called the East Sea. The Southern Wilderness is called the South Sea," the Vice Pavilion Master said. "East Sea, West Sea, North Sea, South Sea," Qin Feiyang murmured. "Wait." The Vice Pavilion Master suddenly seemed to think of something and said in surprise, "You want to go to the deepest part of the Heavenly Dragon Sea? Don't tell me you want to go to Divine Land?" "To be honest, before this, I didn't have this idea. Because before I didn't know Divine Land was in the Heavenly Dragon Sea," Qin Feiyang said. The Vice Pavilion Master breathed a sigh of relief. "No. But then," he frowned again and looked at Qin Feiyang, saying, "From what you said, now that you know Divine Land's location, you really want to go and have a look?" "I do have this idea," Qin Feiyang said with a smile. The Vice Pavilion Master immediately looked angry and said, "You'd better get rid of this idea immediately because you can't enter Divine Land at all." "Can't?" Qin Feiyang frowned. "Yes. The entire divine land is enveloped in a bounded domain. And the owner of this bounded domain is the ruler of divine land, Longzun. In other words, divine land is actually a giant cage. And this bounded domain has a total of 4 entrances and exits, located in the north, south, east, and west directions. Every entrance and exit is guarded by a divine dragon. They are extremely powerful, and with my cultivation, I can't force my way through. The Vice Pavilion Master said in a deep voice. A giant cage. Qin Feiyang frowned. The Vice Pavilion Master pondered for a while and said, if you really want to go to divine land, you can wait. Wait. Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Yes. Our Pavilion Master, who is Miss Chio's master, will go to the General Pavilion of Divine Land once every 100 years, and then you can go to Divine Land with him. The Vice Pavilion Master said. Qin Feiyang said, is there no other way like a transmission altar? No. The Vice Pavilion Master shook his head. Qin Feiyang said, how long will it be before Pavilion Master enters Divine Land again? The Vice Pavilion Master said, 50 years. 50 years, Qin Feiyang murmured. This is the only way you can go, or you will die. Besides, 50 years is not a long time for someone of your cultivation. The Vice Pavilion Master said. People like the God of War can cultivate in seclusion for decades, centuries, or even thousands of years. 50 years is indeed not a long time. Sheng Guanqiu said. In her heart, she did not want Qin Feiyang to take the risk. But she did not know that 50 years was too long for Qin Feiyang, who owned the ancient castle. But the two of them were also concerned about him, and they could not be ungrateful. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while, looked up at the two, and said with a smile, we'll talk about it later. Hearing that, the Vice Pavilion Master and Sheng Guanqiu did not say anything more. Qin Feiyang got up and said, okay, I've got what I want to know, and I should go. Where are you going? Sheng Guanqiu asked hurriedly. The northern region is so big, there must be a place for me to stay. You don't have to see me off, I'll see you again. By the way, I'll help the Ninth Heaven Palace, and I hope you can keep it a secret. Qin Feiyang cupped his hands and smiled, then entered the ancient castle, and then drove the ancient castle, quickly leaving the treasure house. Dragons, Sheng Guanqiu frowned and muttered to himself for a while, then looked at the Vice Pavilion Master and said, Your Excellency, dragons are in Divine Land. How did he become friends with dragons? Is he from the Divine Prefecture? Chapter 2175. Impossible. If he was from the Divine Land, he wouldn't have come to us to ask about the dragons. As for how he became enemies with the dragons, to be honest, I really don't understand. There are countless young geniuses in the Northern Domain, but this kid is the only one I can't see through. The Deputy Pavilion Master shook his head, got up, and left with his crutch. Jiang Haotian. Where did you come from? Sheng Guanqiu murmured. Buzz. Suddenly, there was a buzzing sound in Sheng Guanqiu's arms. Coming back to his senses, Sheng Guanqiu sat at the desk and took out the image crystal. An illusory figure quickly appeared. It was Sheng Guanfenglan. Sheng Guanqiu shook his head and smiled. Sister, I knew you would send me a message. Then don't keep me guessing. Who helped the Ninth Heaven Palace? Sheng Guanfenglan said. You and I know him. And he just left the Ninth Heaven Palace. Sheng Guanqiu said. What? It's him. Sheng Guanfenglan was stunned. Surprised, right? Sheng Guanqiu smiled. Quite surprised. But I don't understand how he could be so influential. Sheng Guanfenglan was suspicious. Elixir recipes. Sheng Guanqiu said. Elixir recipes? Sheng Guanfenglan was stunned and said in surprise. You mean the recipes for the 4 symbols Infinite Divine Pill, 9 Transformation Dragon Blood Pill, and 9 Chu Yellow Dragon Pill? Yes. Sheng Guanqiu nodded. Why did he do that? He has already left the Ninth Heaven Palace. Why did he pay such a high price to help us? Sheng Guanfenglan frowned. I don't know. I asked. Not only did I ask, but the Deputy Pavilion Master also asked. But he only said that it was because of personal reasons. Sheng Guanqiu said helplessly. Personal reasons. Shangguan Fenglan murmured. Sister, this person is really good. His departure is a loss to the Ninth Heaven Palace. Shangguan Qiu sighed. How could I not know? But I couldn't persuade the first elder. Besides, it was Jiang Haotian who asked to leave. You can't keep a person who is determined to leave, Shangguan Fenglan said. Shangguan Qiu nodded and said, keep this to yourself. Don't tell anyone else. Why? Shangguan Fenglan was suspicious. This was a good thing. It was worth singing and praising. So why hide it from everyone? This is his personal wish. Maybe he doesn't want anything in return. He just wants to be a good person. Shangguan Qiu smiled. Quietly be a good person? Shangguan Fenglan was rather speechless. She nodded and said, all right, let's make this a secret forever. Outside Sky Dragon City on the mountain, a young man in white stood at the edge of a cliff with his hands behind his back. He was handsome like jade, and his body was tall and straight. His long hair and clothes fluttered in the wind. Looking from afar, it was like a divine sun had descended into the world. Next to them, there was also a woman in yellow. She had an exquisite figure, and her black hair fluttered in the wind. At first glance, one could tell that she was a stunning woman. Unfortunately, she was wearing a mask that covered her face. The two of them were Qin Feiyang and Fire Lotus. Fire Lotus looked at Qin Feiyang and asked suspiciously, Qin Dage, why do I feel that you're a little unhappy? Qin Feiyang sighed deeply and said, the dragons are so powerful. How can I be happy? So it's because of the dragons. Fire Lotus suddenly understood and said with a smile, actually, it's not a big deal. Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned. He turned to Fire Lotus and asked, what do you mean? The dragons are indeed terrifying, but they're not invincible. Take Feng Yuan for example. He's also very strong, but didn't he still lose to you? Fire Lotus said. Haha. Qin Feiyang smiled and rubbed Fire Lotus's head, saying, after hearing what you said, my confidence is back. That's right. No matter how strong the enemy was, one could not be dispirited, because only by facing it bravely could one have a chance to defeat the enemy. Phew. Qin Feiyang let out a long breath and said in a low voice, Artifact Spirit, come out for a moment. The artifact spirit of the Grey Castle immediately rushed out of the Sea of Qi and floated in front of Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang said, do you know about the dragons? Yes. The artifact spirit nodded. Qin Feiyang frowned and said, then why didn't you tell me? The artifact spirit said in a hoarse voice, as the deputy pavilion master said, these things are still too far away for you. You didn't deliberately hide it from me? Qin Feiyang said. How is that possible? The artifact spirit said. Why is it impossible? The deepest part of the heavenly dragon sea is where the divine land is. You want me to go to the deepest part? You can't be sure that you have no other purpose. Qin Feiyang said meaningfully. The artifact spirit said angrily, why are you so suspicious? Then tell me now, did you really see my ancestor and Lu Xingyang in the deepest part of the heavenly dragon sea? Qin Feiyang said. The artifact spirit said, okay, I swear that if I lie, my soul will be destroyed and I will never be reincarnated. But Qin Feiyang did not believe this bullshit oath, because this oath was meaningless at all. However, he did not continue to dwell on this issue. Lowering his head and pondering for a moment, Qin Feiyang looked at the artifact spirit and said, I remember you said that my ancestor and Lu Xingyang seem to be planning something in the deepest part. Yes. The artifact spirit nodded. Qin Feiyang said, do you think they are planning to secretly enter the divine land? Secretly enter the divine land? The artifact spirit was taken aback and pondered for a moment, then looked at Qin Feiyang and said, you don't say. Maybe there is such a possibility. The dragons want to deprive him of the power of his bloodline, and kill the palace master of the Ninth Heaven Palace. He is looking for the dragons for revenge. Revenge? Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered. But this is just our guess. They may not have really entered the divine land. But the deputy pavilion master said something very reasonable. With your current cultivation, going to the divine land is courting death. The artifact spirit said. Qin Feiyang took a deep breath and said with a smile, then cultivate. We will talk about going to the Heavenly Dragon Sea after breaking through to the half-step Divine Lord realm. Cultivating is so boring. How about I walk around? Maybe one day I will recover my memory. Fire Lotus said. You little girl. Qin Feiyang shook his head helplessly and said, Okay, but if anything happens, remember to send me a message immediately. Okay. Fire Lotus nodded. Qin Feiyang was still a little worried. He looked at the artifact spirit and said with a smile, Why don't you follow her and protect her? The artifact spirit hesitated. You don't need to cultivate, so what are you hesitating for? It's decided. Qin Feiyang said, I am a heaven-defying artifact, but I have become a bodyguard? The artifact spirit was a little dissatisfied. But he did not go against Qin Feiyang's wishes and summoned his main body. Be careful. Qin Feiyang reminded Fire Lotus again, and entered the castle. Fire Lotus looked at the place where Qin Feiyang disappeared, and said to the artifact spirit, Long time no see. The artifact spirit looked at Fire Lotus in surprise and said, You didn't lose your memory? Yes. After the tribulation, I have recovered my memory. Fire Lotus nodded. The artifact spirit said, Then why did you pretend to lose your memory and stay by Qin Feiyang's side? Fire Lotus smiled faintly. Because I am dependent on him. Dependent? The artifact spirit was in disbelief. Fire Lotus said, You know my identity and my methods, so you better not scheme against Qin Feiyang, or else. Before Fire Lotus could finish, the artifact spirit sneered. Or else what? To be honest, if we really fight, you might not be a match for me. Indeed. But at the very least, I can make you pay the price. Fire Lotus's eyes shone coldly. The artifact spirit's pupils constricted as he said helplessly, all right, let's get along peacefully from now on. Fire Lotus raised her brow. You don't understand what I mean? I'm not saying that we should get along peacefully. I'm saying that we shouldn't scheme against Qin Feiyang. Qin Batian and Lu Xingyang are not people to be trifled with. Would I dare to scheme against them? The artifact spirit was somewhat helpless. It's good that you know. Fire Lotus said. The artifact spirit said. Then where are you going now? Qin Feiyang needs a full 5 years to break through to half-step Divine Lord. In these 5 years, I can help him do a lot of things. Fire Lotus thought. What things? The artifact spirit was suspicious. Go to the Sky Dragon Sea and clear all obstacles for him. Fire Lotus's eyes flashed coldly as she turned into a stream of light and flew away like lightning. How considerate. The artifact spirit murmured as he returned to his body and chased after Fire Lotus. Time passed. The storm caused by Feng Yuan, and the band gradually calmed down as time passed. However, no one forgot about Qin Feiyang. Half a year later, Dan Wangkai finally understood the mysteries of becoming a god, and broke through to the false god realm. Qin Feiyang brought him to the castle, and taught him the soul-gathering divine art. Half a year later, White-Eyed Wolf and the other beasts, Mermaid Princess and the others also broke through to the peak war god realm. After opening the door of potential, they all took the 4 symbols infinite divine pill. In the end, without exception, they all became half-step divine lords. This made Qin Feiyang very envious. If he had taken the 4 symbols infinite divine pill in order to enter the resource hall, then he would have broken through to half-step divine lord by now. But it had already become a fact, so there was nothing to regret. He continued to cultivate. There was no need to think about the soul stone now. He had tens of billions on him. No matter how much he used it, it would never be used up. 5 years was not a long time, but it was not short either. Just as Fire Lotus said, many things could be done in 5 years, but also many things could happen. Jiutian Palace had completely calmed down. And every year, new disciples would be recruited as usual. In 5 years, Jiutian Palace recruited 5 times. But these 5 times, it was not as cruel as when Qin Feiyang and the others entered Jiutian Palace. Every time, there were 500 to 600 people who passed. And Mu Tianyang and Hua Yi also conscientiously took care of the resource hall. However, although Qin Feiyang had disappeared for 5 years, from time to time, people would mention his name, and it was basically worship and praise for him. And frenzy, ever since that incident ended, did not appear again, as if he had evaporated into thin air. As for the treasure hall, everything was normal. It was just that in these 5 years, Sheng Guanqiu would often stand alone in front of the window in the middle of the night, staring at the moon in a daze. No one knew what she was thinking. Fupin Chinese. Chapter 2176. Outside Sky Dragon City. 5 years had passed. The vegetation on the mountain was even more lush. Swish. At the peak of the mountain, a figure appeared out of thin air. It was Qin Feiyang, who had been away for a long time. 5 years. It's really gone by in a hurry. Qin Feiyang looked at the morning sun on the horizon and sighed. This was the longest seclusion he had ever gone into in his life. He wondered if everyone still remembered him after 5 years. Phew. Qin Feiyang let out a long breath and took out the image crystal. However, he was stunned. He was sending a message to Fire Lotus. In the past 5 years, Fire Lotus had never returned. He didn't pay much attention to it. After all, the Grey Castle was protecting Fire Lotus. But he didn't expect that there would be no response when he sent a message to Fire Lotus. What was going on? Did something happen? Thinking of this, he couldn't help but panic. He closed his eyes and sensed the Grey Castle through the blood contract. Damn it! A moment later, Qin Feiyang opened his eyes. His face was as calm as water. He couldn't sense the existence of the Grey Castle. Hearing the commotion outside, the white-eyed wolf asked suspiciously, "Little Qinzi, what happened?" "Fire Lotus is gone," Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice. "What? Didn't I tell her not to run around?" The white-eyed wolf said in shock. Zhao Tailai and the others also opened their eyes because they were no longer in the mood to cultivate. As the saying goes, love the house and its crow. They also treated Fire Lotus as their own sister. Don't worry, cultivate in peace. I'll think of a way to find her. Qin Feiyang thought to himself. Not only Zhao Tailai and the others, even Dan Wangkai had broken through to half-step God Lord. Because from pseudo-god to perfect war god, one only needed to refine a total of 11 million soul stones. From pseudo-god to beginner war god, 1,000. From beginner to small success, 10,000. From small success to great success, 100,000. From great success to perfection, 1 million. From perfection to perfection, it was 10 million. It would take many years to gather 10 million soul stones outside, but the ancient castle was different. 1 day equals 1 year. Therefore, even though Dan Wangkai had only reached the false divinity realm 4 years ago, he had already broken through to the perfection battle god realm after a few years of hard work. After consuming the 4 symbols infinite divine pill, he stepped into the god monarch realm. However, although they had taken a shortcut and had broken into the half-step divine lord realm before Qin Feiyang, now that they were attacking the initial divine lord realm, they were no different from Qin Feiyang. Therefore, Qin Feiyang did not want to make a big fuss, so as to avoid delaying his cultivation. Alright then. When you really can't find it, we'll go out and search with you. The white-eyed wolf said. Yes. Qin Feiyang responded. He lowered his head, frowned, and fell into deep thought. Where could Fire Lotus have gone? 9 Heaven Palace? It shouldn't be. Treasure Pavilion? That was also impossible. Before leaving, she only said that she was going out for a walk, but did not say the exact location. The northern region was so big, finding a person was like finding a needle in a haystack. In his heart, he was extremely frustrated. Wait! Suddenly, Qin Feiyang thought of a person. This person would definitely be able to find the Fire Lotus. Qin Feiyang hurriedly revived the image crystal. Buzz. Not long later, a shadow appeared. It was Mu Tianyang. Seeing that it was Qin Feiyang, Mu Tianyang was stunned and shouted, "Io, isn't this Qin Feiyang, young Master Qin? Where are you now?" Qin Feiyang was not in the mood to talk nonsense with him, so he asked directly, "Of course I'm in my cave, otherwise I would dare to call out your real name?" Mu Tianyang rolled his eyes at him. Qin Feiyang said, "Come to my place immediately." "Huh." Mu Tianyang looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously and said, "Look at you, did something happen?" "You first." After Qin Feiyang finished speaking, he gave the coordinates to Mu Tianyang. I'm going to the resource hall to check the warehouse. Can we talk about it at night? Mu Tianyang frowned. No. Qin Feiyang said. Mu Tianyang said helplessly. Well, I'll go and ask for leave from the hall master. Hall master? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Yes. As early as 4 years ago, a new hall master came to the resource hall. Mu Tianyang said. Who is it? Qin Feiyang asked. You won't know him even if I tell you. Wait a minute. Coincidentally, I also found something strange recently. I'll tell you when we meet later. After Mu Tianyang said, he turned off the image crystal. Something strange? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Then a trace of suspicion crept into his eyes. He knew Mu Tianyang's character. He wouldn't care about ordinary things at all. In other words, if it could make Mu Tianyang feel strange, it must be something unusual. He put away the image crystal and waited patiently. After waiting for about half an hour, whoosh, Mu Tianyang finally landed on the top of the mountain, looked up and down at Qin Feiyang, frowning. You've broken through? Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. I thought you went to have fun these 5 years. It turns out that you've been hiding here to cultivate. Mu Tianyang said. Qin Feiyang shook his head and sighed. The future is long and full of danger. It's impossible not to cultivate. But your cultivation, why is it still at the perfect war god? Nonsense. My Golden Crow Temple can only be half as fast as your ancient castle, so it will definitely take longer than you. Besides, I still have to work during the day. I only have time to cultivate at night. Mu Tianyang said. Then you've wasted so much time. Have you found the whereabouts of the spirit vein? Qin Feiyang said. Yes. Mu Tianyang nodded, then grinned. But it has nothing to do with you now. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes and said. Let's get down to business. Ask Mu Qing to come out and help me find someone. Mu Tianyang said. Who? Fire Lotus. Qin Feiyang said. Fire Lotus? Mu Tianyang was stunned and frowned. Hasn't she always been by your side? 5 years ago, when I was in seclusion, she said that cultivation was too boring and wanted to go out for a walk, but she never came back. When I came out of seclusion just now, I wanted to send her a message and ask her to come back, but there was no response. I'm thinking, did something happen to her? Qin Feiyang said. How can she say that cultivation is boring when she has a divine artifact like the ancient castle? Mu Tianyang was speechless. 1 day was equal to 1 year. He wanted such a time array even in his dreams. But this woman was not willing to do it. She really did not know how lucky she was. Qin Feiyang urged. Stop talking nonsense. Ask Mu Qing to help find her. Mu Tianyang said. Mu Qing, did you hear that? Help him find her. Okay. Mu Qing, who was waiting in the Golden Crow Temple, responded and opened her all-seeing eye. Looking at Qin Feiyang's eager face, Mu Tianyang was a little speechless and said, Don't worry, it won't be so fast. Let's settle old scores first. Old scores? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Let me remind you, Soul Stone. Mu Tianyang said. Soul Stone? Qin Feiyang was stunned, and then he suddenly understood and smiled. You already know? Of course. I already knew. I just didn't want to disturb you, so I didn't send you a message. Mu Tianyang said. Qin Feiyang laughed dryly. You've even found the soul vein. Do you still need a few soul stones? You call this a few? Are you kidding me? That's more than 30 billion. I don't care, you have to give it to me. If you act shamelessly, I'll reveal your identity. Mu Tianyang said angrily. Don't be so stingy. Besides, talking about money hurts feelings. Qin Feiyang laughed. Don't play this game. I can forgive you if you give the recipe to the treasure pavilion. But you can't take the soul stones alone. Mu Tianyang snorted coldly. Okay, I'll give it to you. Qin Feiyang looked at him helplessly and said, Old Zhao, prepare 32. 5 billion soul stones. Are you really going to give it to him? Zhao Tailai said. Otherwise, if he really reveals my identity, maybe the dragons will come to me tomorrow. Qin Feiyang said. Okay. Zhao Tailai said reluctantly. Although the soul stones they had now were enough for them to use for a long time, losing more than 30 billion would be painful for anyone. After a while, Qin Feiyang took out an interspatial ring and threw it to Mu Tianyang. Mu Tianyang caught it in his hand and checked it carefully. He looked up at Qin Feiyang and said with a smile, "That's more like it. Don't be so smug. Ask Mu Qing if it's not done yet." Qin Feiyang said. Mu Tianyang smiled proudly and said, "I have the result long ago, but I didn't see the soul stones, so I didn't want to tell you." You. Qin Feiyang suddenly felt a surge of anger in his heart. But then, a sense of powerlessness rose in his heart again. He had no choice. After all, he was the one who asked for help. Qin Feiyang held back his anger and said, "Tell me quickly." Mu Tianyang said. Mu Qing said that the all-seeing eye can't see the exact location of the fire lotus. What? Can't see it? Qin Feiyang turned pale with fright. Don't worry. Although I can't see her exact location, at least I can be sure that she's still alive. Mu Tianyang said. That's true. Qin Feiyang nodded. If the fire lotus was dead, the all-seeing eye would not be able to find any traces. Mu Tianyang said. Although I can't see the exact location, I can still see the general direction. Which direction? Qin Feiyang asked. The Sea of Heavenly Dragons. Mu Tianyang said. Why did she go to the Sea of Heavenly Dragons? Qin Feiyang was shocked. All right, it's just an outsider. Is there a need to be so concerned? Let's talk about this matter that I've encountered recently. Mu Tianyang opened his mouth, and his expression changed as well. It seemed to be somewhat solemn. What's the matter? Qin Feiyang looked at him suspiciously. Let me take you to a place first. Mu Tianyang opened a teleportation altar. Qin Feiyang, with a stomach full of doubts, followed Mu Tianyang and jumped onto the altar. The next scene made Qin Feiyang even more puzzled. Mu Tianyang opened a few more altars in succession. Where were they going? After opening the 8th teleportation altar, the two landed in the air above a barren mountain. The barren mountain was about hundreds of miles long. Bushes and weeds were everywhere. The beasts that wandered in the mountains looking for food were also very weak. And around the barren mountain, there were more than a dozen villages of different sizes. Here, Mu Tianyang did not open any more teleportation altars. Obviously, this was the destination. Qin Feiyang glanced at the villages, and then lowered his head to scan the barren mountain below. Immediately, he was stunned. In a valley directly below, there was actually a cemetery. Chapter 2177. There were a total of 7 tombs in the cemetery. Around them, green pines swayed in the wind. The ground was covered with green grass. Between the grass, one could even see the blooming wildflowers. Compared with the desolation and chaos outside, this place was particularly quiet. Go down. Mu Tianyang said and landed directly in the cemetery. Qin Feiyang also landed beside Mu Tianyang and looked up at the first tomb. Immediately, he was stunned. On the tombstone, the words Feng Yuan were engraved. He looked at the other tombstones behind him. They were Feng Wenhai, Feng Wenwan, Jin Yinchang, Feng Zihan, Feng Zijuan, and Fatty Jin. Qin Feiyang asked, Is this the cemetery of the Feng family? Yes. Mu Tianyang nodded. Qin Feiyang asked suspiciously, Then who are Feng Wenwan and Fatty Jin? Feng Wenwan is Jin Yinchang's wife. Fatty Jin is also Fatso Jin. Mu Tianyang said. It's them. Qin Feiyang suddenly understood and looked at the tombstones. Other than their names, there were no other words on their tombstones. In front of the tombstones, there was a burnt incense. There were also a few jade plates with some rotten fruits on them. Obviously, no one had been here for a long time. Qin Feiyang looked carefully for a while and asked, This is Feng Yuan's ancestral land? No. Feng Yuan's ancestral land is not here. It's a small village in the south. In the past, he was a child of a poor family. Mu Tianyang said. South. We are in the north now. This is the opposite direction. Why are they buried here? Qin Feiyang was puzzled. Isn't it simple? The The person who buried them must be worried that we will continue to take revenge, and wanted them to have a quiet place to rest. Mu Tianyang said. Continue to take revenge? Will we dig up the graves and destroy the bodies? What do you think we are? Boring. Qin Feiyang was speechless. What can you do if others think so? By the way, after observing for so long, have you found anything strange? Mu Tianyang said. No. Qin Feiyang shook his head. The corner of Mu Tianyang's mouth twitched as he said speechlessly, It's already so obvious, yet you actually didn't notice it. Obvious? Qin Feiyang swept his gaze over the tombs again and asked, Do you want to say who buried them here? Mu Tianyang was stunned. Isn't it? Qin Feiyang asked. Of course not. Although Feng Yuan's entire family is dead, Yin Hui and Jin Yunchang still have their families. For example, the man called Jin Zhou last time is Jin Yunchang's nephew. These people definitely won't let the bodies of Feng Yuan's family be exposed in the wilderness. If I'm not wrong, these tombs were built by them. Mu Tianyang said. Qin Feiyang frowned and said unhappily, Don't keep me in suspense. Just say it. Yin Hui. Mu Tianyang said word by word. Yin Hui? Qin Feiyang was stunned. He looked at the tombs and frowned. He didn't see Yin Hui's tomb. Mu Tianyang said. The tombs of the whole family are here, but why is Yin Hui's tomb not here? Wait. I remember that Yin Hui was taken away by Elder Yin. Maybe Elder Yin didn't give Yin Hui's body to her family? Qin Feiyang said. At first I thought so too. But later, according to my investigation, Elder Yin didn't bury Yin Hui at all. And on the day of the incident, Elder Yin left Jiutian Palace alone. As for where he went, I didn't find out. But I think he should have sent Yin Hui's body out. Mu Tianyang said. Qin Feiyang asked, What about Yin Hui's family? That's what's even stranger. Yin Hui's family and Jin Yunchang's family are all missing. Mu Tianyang said. What? All missing? Qin Feiyang was surprised. Yes. When I found the tombs here, I immediately went to investigate the Yin and Jin families. But when I found the ancestral grounds of these two families, I found that they were already empty. At that time, I felt very strange. Why did they all disappear? So, I secretly visited a few large villages nearby. Guess what they said? They said that the two families were still there on the night of the incident. But the next morning, the two families all disappeared. Mu Tianyang said. They all disappeared overnight? Qin Feiyang frowned. I guess it should be related to Elder Yin. As soon as he left Jiutian Palace, the two families disappeared. How could there be such a coincidence? Mu Tianyang said. Then, did you monitor Elder Yin? Qin Feiyang asked. Yes. But in the past 5 years, other than coming here to burn incense, I have been guarding the prison. I really couldn't find anything. As for the whereabouts of the Yin and Jin families, I also carefully investigated, but there were no clues. Mu Tianyang shook his head regretfully. Qin Feiyang furrowed his brows and asked, Then what exactly are you thinking? I don't know. I don't dare to jump to conclusions. But I keep feeling that this matter is unusual. Mu Tianyang said. Unusual? Qin Feiyang muttered. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something and said, You said that Elder Yin would come here to burn incense. Yes. He would come once a year. I followed him and found this graveyard. Mu Tianyang said. Qin Feiyang said in surprise, Does he have any relationship with the Feng family? Mu Tianyang frowned and said, Other than his master-disciple relationship with Yin Hui, there is no other relationship. He came here to burn incense because of his master-disciple relationship. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and said, This doesn't seem to make sense. It does make sense, but I really couldn't find anything on Elder Yin. Mu Tianyang said. Yin Hui's tomb isn't here. Wait, is her tomb in the Yin family's territory? Qin Feiyang asked. Mu Tianyang said. I went to take a look, but it's not there. That's really strange, Qin Feiyang muttered. Mu Tianyang said. Actually, I have a bold guess. Would you like to hear it? Go ahead. Qin Feiyang said. Mu Tianyang said in a low voice. Yin Hui might not be dead. What? Qin Feiyang stared at Mu Tianyang in surprise. Mu Tianyang said, do you still remember how Yin Hui died in the meeting hall? Of course. Qin Feiyang nodded and said, Elder Yun killed her personally. Wait. Elder Yun killed her personally. Could it be that Elder Yun did something secretly? Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled. If that was the case, everything could be explained. However, in his impression, Elder Yun was not such a person. I remember that the first elder asked Shangguan Fenglan to kill Yin Hui, but just as Shangguan Fenglan was about to do it, Elder Yun suddenly appeared and said that he wanted to kill Yin Hui personally. When he killed Yin Hui, we were all present and saw it with our own eyes. There was nothing unusual. However, after Yin Hui fell to the ground, no one went forward to confirm whether she was dead or not. Mu Tianyang said. Qin Feiyang narrowed his eyes, and there was a glimmer in his eyes. Mu Tianyang said, if Yin Hui is really not dead, where do you think she might be now? Qin Feiyang was speechless. The North region is so big, how would I know? However, we really have to confirm this matter, or it will be a hidden danger. Yes. Feng Yuan, Feng Wenhai, Feng Zijuan, and Feng Zihan all died in our hands. If Yin Hui is still alive, she will definitely not let it go. Mu Tianyang said worriedly. Qin Feiyang asked, did you tell Shangguan Fenglan about this? No. Mu Tianyang shook his head. Actually, you can tell her to borrow the power of the Law Enforcement Hall to investigate this matter. After all, the Law Enforcement Hall has many people. It will definitely be easier for them to investigate than us. Qin Feiyang said. That makes sense. I'll go look for her when we go back later. Mu Tianyang thought for a moment and nodded with a smile. Qin Feiyang said, there's also the power of the treasure school. We can also ask for help. That's right. The people of the treasure school are all over the North region. If they take action, even if Yin Hui is hiding in a crack in the ground, they can still find her. Mu Tianyang's eyes lit up. But then, he frowned again and said, however, I don't have enough face to ask the people of the treasure school for help. You have to do this. Okay. Go to Shangguan Fenglan. I'll go to the treasure school. Within 3 days, we must find out the truth about this matter. Qin Feiyang said. Within 3 days? Do we have to be in such a hurry? Mu Tianyang was suspicious. Qin Feiyang said, because I plan to set off for the Sky Dragon Sea in 3 days. This, Mu Tianyang frowned. Qin Feiyang said, if it's not convenient for you to go now, you don't have to go. But I heard that the Divine Land is in the deepest part of the Sky Dragon Sea. The Divine Land is in the deepest part of the Sky Dragon Sea. Mu Tianyang was stunned. Yes. I've basically inquired about the situation of the dragons. And according to my guess, the ancestor and Lu Zhengyang should be in the Divine Land. Qin Feiyang said. He was clearly tempting Mu Tianyang. This? Mu Tianyang's eyes flickered when he heard this. Don't think about it. Investigate Yin Hui's matter first. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Okay. Mu Tianyang nodded. The two of them opened the legendary altar and left. Treasure Pavilion. On the 3rd floor, in the study, a figure appeared out of thin air. It was Qin Feiyang. 5 years had passed and there were not many changes here. However, Sheng Guanqiu was not in the study at this time. Qin Feiyang did not inform her. He walked around the bookshelf for a while, and then sat at the coffee table to make tea. After a while, in the study, there was a strong fragrance of tea. Qin Feiyang tasted the tea while sending a message to Fire Lotus, but there was no response at all. The Sky Dragon Sea is so dangerous. What are you going to do there? Qin Feiyang was very angry. Although Mu Qing's all-seeing eye confirmed that Fire Lotus was still alive, there was no guarantee that she was not in danger, because the all-seeing eye could only spy on the other party's position, and could not predict her safety. Perhaps Fire Lotus was now trapped somewhere and in despair. Perhaps she was seriously injured by sea beasts. Or perhaps she was captured. These were all possibilities. Chapter 2178. At noon, Shang Guanqiu had finally finished her work in the treasure pavilion and was going to take a rest in the study, but when she pushed the door open, a strong tea aroma wafted into her nose. She was very familiar with this tea aroma. It was given to her by the deputy pavilion leader to serve Qin Feiyang. Immediately, her eyes were filled with anger. Not only did he break into her study, but he also touched her things. How dare he? She pushed the door open and was about to lose her temper. But when she saw the young man in white sitting by the tea table, she was stunned. Qin Feiyang looked up at Shang Guanqiu and asked suspiciously, "Miss Shangguan, what's wrong with you? Why are you so angry?" Nothing. Shang Guanqiu came back to his senses and quickly waved his hand. Then he closed the door and his expression returned to normal. He smiled and said, "Where have you been for the past 5 years?" Qin Feiyang shook his head and said, "I want to, but I'm not strong enough." Strong enough? Shang Guanqiu was stunned. She looked at Qin Feiyang and asked in surprise, "You've become a half-step divine lord?" "Yes. It's not easy to cultivate in seclusion for 5 years." Qin Feiyang sighed. Shang Guanqiu was in disbelief. He became a half-step divine lord in 5 years? That's too fast. No. Fast was not enough to describe it. It was insane. Shang Guanqiu walked to the tea table and sat down. She looked at Qin Feiyang curiously and asked, "How did you do it?" "How did I do it?" Qin Feiyang looked at her suspiciously. Of course it's your cultivation. Even if you have enough soul stones, you can't become a half-step divine lord from a perfect god of war in 5 years. Shang Guanqiu said. That's because you don't know any better. How can you ask such a personal question? Qin Feiyang was unhappy. Shang Guanqiu rolled her eyes. Qin Feiyang smiled and asked, "How have you been these years?" "How can I be? Just like before, I'll manage the treasure pavilion during the day and cultivate in seclusion at night." Shang Guanqiu smiled. Not bad. Qin Feiyang nodded. Shang Guanqiu asked, "Is there anything I can help you with this time?" "It's nothing much. It's just that I haven't seen you in a few years and I miss you, so I came to see you." Qin Feiyang smiled. "Miss me?" Shang Guanqiu was stunned. Qin Feiyang chuckled. "We're friends after all. Isn't it normal for friends to miss friends?" "Just friends," Shang Guanqiu murmured. He could not help but feel disappointed. Qin Feiyang smiled again and said, "Of course there is indeed a small matter that I need your help with." Shang Guanqiu was stunned. He pursed his lips and said, "I knew you wouldn't come here for no reason." "Say it." Qin Feiyang said, "Help me investigate the whereabouts of the Yin and Jin families." Yin family? Jin clan? Shang Guanqiu was puzzled. Qin Feiyang said, "They are Yin Hui and Jin Yinchang's clansmen." "So it's them." "Although I don't know them, it's not difficult to find their clansmen's land." Shang Guanqiu said, No, not their clansmen's land, but their current whereabouts. Because these two families had already disappeared 5 years ago. Qin Feiyang said. Disappeared? Shang Guanqiu was surprised. Qin Feiyang did not hide anything and briefly explained the situation. "So that's how it is." Shang Guanqiu nodded in realization and said, "According to what you said, Yin Hui might still be alive." Qin Feiyang said, "So I have to confirm this matter." "It's not difficult. As long as they are still in the northern region, with the power of the treasure school, we can find them. But it will take some time. After all, the northern region is too big," Shang Guanqiu said. "How long?" Qin Feiyang asked. "Half a month." Shang Guanqiu thought for a while and said. "Half a month?" Qin Feiyang frowned. This was a little different from his plan. His plan was to find the Yin and Jin families in 3 days. Half a month is already very short. If we really want to search the entire northern region, with the power of the treasure school, it will take at least a month. Shang Guanqiu said. Hearing this, Qin Feiyang nodded and said, "Okay, as long as we can find them." "That's good. Sit for a while, I'll arrange it right away." Shang Guanqiu got up and left quickly. What a swift and decisive woman. Looking at Shang Guanqiu's back, Qin Feiyang could not help shaking his head and smiling. "Feiyang, let me out for a while." Suddenly, The mermaid princess's voice rang in Qin Feiyang's mind. Qin Feiyang was stunned. With a thought, the mermaid princess immediately appeared beside him. The mermaid princess looked around the study curiously. Qin Feiyang was a little confused and said, "You were cultivating. Why did you suddenly come out?" "Since I entered the ancient world, I have been cultivating in the castle, and have not seen the outside world properly," the mermaid princess said. Qin Feiyang was stunned. After thinking carefully, it seemed to be true. He could not help but feel guilty. He pulled the mermaid princess and let the mermaid princess sit on his lap. Then he grabbed the mermaid princess' hand and said apologetically, "I'm sorry. You didn't do anything wrong. Why are you apologizing to me?" The mermaid princess looked at him suspiciously. "It has been 5 or 6 years since I entered the ancient world. But in the past 5 or 6 years, I have been busy with my own things and have never been with you properly. I have never thought about how you feel. Is it lonely to stay in the castle? Are you bored? I have always thought that I am a good man, but in fact, I am not. I am not a qualified man at all." Qin Feiyang blamed himself. "How can it be so serious?" The mermaid princess hurriedly said, "I know you are considerate and will not blame me, but I feel bad. How about this? Before we find the Yin family and the Jin family, I will accompany you to have a good stroll around the northern region." Qin Feiyang said. The mermaid princess thought for a moment and said with a smile, "If you think that will make you feel better, then I will reluctantly agree to it." Reluctantly? Qin Feiyang was stunned, and his hands suddenly became mischievous. He chuckled and said, "Little girl, are you still trying to take advantage of me? Let's see how I will deal with you today." "What are you doing? This is someone else's study." The mermaid princess blushed and scolded. "What are you afraid of? There is no one here anyway." Qin Feiyang snickered. "Dirty," the mermaid princess said angrily. Her ears were red, but her heart was filled with happiness. Although she had been cultivating, she also knew what was going on outside. For example, Gao Xiaohui's hidden feelings for Qin Feiyang. For example, the deputy pavilion master's matchmaking. If it were another man, he might have agreed, because it was normal to have many wives. But Qin Feiyang rejected every time, and the reason was her. So she was very satisfied and lucky to have met this man. Creak. Suddenly, the door opened. The two of them were flirting, but the door opened. The mermaid princess stood up reflexively, and her cheeks were red. Qin Feiyang also hurriedly retracted his hands. He looked up and saw Shengguan Qiu standing at the door, looking at him with an extremely exaggerated expression. Qin Feiyang was very embarrassed. Didn't she go to arrange the search for the Yin family and the Jin family? Why did she come back so soon? Shengguan Qiu was also caught off guard and couldn't come back to her senses for a long time. "Well, Miss Shengguan, don't misunderstand, we actually didn't." The mermaid princess looked at Shengguan Qiu and hurriedly explained. Shengguan Qiu waved her hand and said, "It's okay, you can continue." After that, she closed the door. "It's all your fault." The mermaid princess glared at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang smiled embarrassedly. Outside the door, after Shengguan Qiu closed the door, she scratched her head. Something was wrong. This was her study. Why did she have to leave? If anyone had to leave, it should be Qin Feiyang and Shengguan Qiu. Phew. Shengguan Qiu let out a long breath and opened the door again. Qin Feiyang smiled to hide the embarrassment on his face and asked, "It's already arranged?" "It's just an order. How much time can it take?" Shengguan Qiu rolled her eyes at Qin Feiyang and looked at the mermaid princess. So beautiful. Although they were both women, she couldn't help but marvel at the mermaid princess in her heart. The mermaid princess said apologetically, "Miss Shengguan, I'm so sorry. Love is deep. It's understandable." Shengguan Qiu smiled. Hearing this, the mermaid princess blushed even more. Shengguan Qiu suddenly froze. She looked at the mermaid princess and asked, "Have I seen you somewhere before?" "Yes, you have. I was with Brother Tian when he signed up for the 9th Heaven Palace's assessment," the mermaid princess said. Yes. It was then. I still remember that at that time, There were many men present who stared at Jiang Haoyan with envious and jealous gazes. Actually, I also think that you being with him is like putting a flower on a pile of cow dung. Shang Guanqiu said. Cow dung? The mermaid princess was dumbfounded. Qin Feiyang was also stunned. Although he wasn't as handsome as Panin, he was still considered a talent. How could he be a pile of cow dung? Ahem. Qin Feiyang coughed dryly and said to Shang Guanqiu, I'm still here. I know you are here. But you're here. Can't I tell you the truth? Shang Guanqiu snorted. Or the truth? Qin Feiyang's face twitched. Was it necessary to be so sarcastic? He suddenly stood up and hugged the mermaid princess. He looked at Shang Guanqiu proudly and said, Even if I'm a pile of cow dung, I'm still a pile of cow dung that people love. But you? Even if you're a flower, no one is willing to pick you. You, Shang Guanqiu stared at Qin Feiyang fiercely. The mermaid princess looked at the two of them and said with a smile, You two are really interesting. People who don't know will think that you two are flirting. Who's flirting with him? Scumbag. Shang Guanqiu's face was full of disdain. And you called me a scumbag? Shang Guanqiu, tell me clearly today. How am I a scumbag? Qin Feiyang said angrily. Does a scumbag need a reason? Shang Guanqiu sneered. Qin Feiyang said angrily, My bad temper. What? You want to hit a woman? This is the way of a scumbag, don't you know? Shang Guanqiu said. Fine. You win. I'll endure it. Qin Feiyang was so angry that he gritted his teeth. Women were indeed creatures that could not be provoked. But he couldn't figure it out. Before the mermaid princess appeared, this woman's attitude towards him was quite good. Why was she criticizing him now? Chapter 2179. Can't you tell? She's interested in you. The mermaid princess voice suddenly rang in Qin Feiyang's mind. What? Interested in me? Qin Feiyang was shocked and looked at Shang Guanqiu in confusion. How could this be? Although Shang Guanqiu's attitude towards him was not bad now, they had fought many times when they first met. The most typical thing was that Shang Guanqiu ordered him to be banned. Therefore, this was impossible. You're really an insensitive blockhead. The mermaid princess rolled her eyes and laughed secretly. Actually, she's not bad. If you really like her, I won't stop you. The corner of Qin Feiyang's mouth twitched as he secretly said, Are you doubting my loyalty to you? The word loyalty is not suitable for you men to say. I'm not doubting you. I'm serious. Because one more person means one more person to take care of you. It'll save me a lot of trouble. The mermaid princess smiled. Qin Feiyang did not know whether to laugh or cry. They were not even married yet. And she was already thinking about how to save him from trouble? She was really preparing for a rainy day. The mermaid princess ignored Qin Feiyang and looked at Shang Guanqiu with a smile. You're older than me, so I'll call you sister. Sure. Shang Guanqiu nodded. The mermaid princess said, Sister Shangguan, are you free today? Shang Guanqiu was stunned and asked suspiciously, Sister, what's up? The mermaid princess smiled. I want to ask sister to take me around Sky Dragon City. Wait. Qin Feiyang quickly stopped the mermaid princess and said, Didn't we agree that I'll accompany you? The mermaid princess said, Can't I change my mind now? Qin Feiyang was about to say something when Shang Guanqiu nodded and smiled. I'm free. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and said angrily, Aren't you busy in the treasure hall? There is. But I'm the manager of the treasure pavilion. I don't need to do everything myself. I can leave it to my subordinates. Shang Guanqiu said playfully. Qin Feiyang said, Forget it. You've been busy all day, so I won't bother you. No trouble, no trouble. I'd be happy to. Little sister, let's go. Big sister will accompany you to play now. Shang Guanqiu said. All right. The mermaid princess nodded. Then the two of them walked out hand in hand. That intimate appearance really made them look like a pair of beautiful sisters. What about me? Qin Feiyang roared as he looked at the backs of the two people. Do whatever you want. Shang Guanqiu waved his hand without looking back. The mermaid princess turned around and smiled at Qin Feiyang. Then she left with Shang Guanqiu. Qin Feiyang stood alone in the study, at a loss of what to do. He was extremely depressed. Young master, why don't we go out and have a few drinks with you? Zhao Tailai's teasing voice sounded. Get lost. Qin Feiyang shouted angrily. Zhao Tailai said, don't be angry. Young madam is actually helping you check. Check? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Yes. Sheng Guanqiu is really interested in you. And young madam didn't lie to you. So she asked Sheng Guanqiu out to find out about his character and character. Zhao Tailai said. How do you know? Qin Feiyang was shocked. Zhao Tailai said. Before young madam went out, she told us that herself. Nonsense. How can a woman push her man into the arms of another woman? Qin Feiyang said angrily. Wrong. No woman in the world is willing to do such a thing. Young madam is doing this for your own good. Because Sheng Guanqiu has the treasure school behind him and his sister, Shengguan Fenglan. And Shengguan Fenglan also has a master who is highly respected. Even the first elder has to be polite to her. These will all become Sheng Guanqiu's backers. So young madam thinks that if she can bring you two together, you can avoid many detours in the northern region in the future. Zhao Tailai said. Qin Feiyang was lost in thought for a while and asked, is that true? Would I lie to you? Zhao Tailai said helplessly. What a silly woman. Qin Feiyang sighed. Young madam is not silly. She is too infatuated with you, so she would rather suffer a little to make you feel better. Zhao Tailai said. Alas, Qin Feiyang sighed. With such a wife, what more could a husband ask for? Young master, don't blame me for talking too much. If you really care about young madam, quickly marry her and give her an official status. Zhao Tailai said. Marry, Qin Feiyang murmured. Zhao Tailai said. Also young madam is so beautiful. If you don't tie her up quickly, she might run away with someone else. Qin Feiyang's face darkened. He said angrily. Old Zhao, do you believe that I won't beat you up? You can't even tell the truth these days. Forget it. Do as you see fit. Zhao Tailai sighed and fell silent. What a crow's beak. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes and then lowered his head to ponder. Mare, I have to go and see in case Sheng Guanqiu leads me astray. A moment later, Qin Feiyang suddenly got up, entered the castle, and left the treasure house silently. Sheng Guanqiu? How come she has time to go shopping today? Wait. Who is the woman beside her? She is so beautiful. She is really beautiful. Why don't I remember such a beautiful woman in Sky Dragon City? On a street, Sheng Guanqiu and the mermaid princess were walking side by side. Both of them were national beauties. Walking on the street, they were undoubtedly a beautiful sight. Miss Shengguan, long time no see. Two young men in purple walked out of the crowd and blocked Sheng Guanqiu and the mermaid princess. Although they were greeting Sheng Guanqiu, their eyes were fixed on the mermaid princess. Their eyes were filled with amazement. She was really a peerless beauty. Sheng Guanqiu looked at the two indifferently and said, So it's the young masters of the Wang and Li family. What a coincidence to meet you here. She knew both of them. They were famous playboys in Sky Dragon City. It's not a coincidence. It's fate. Look at this vast sea of people. For us to be able to meet each other, this is our fate. Since it's fate, why don't we go to your Yulan restaurant and have a few drinks? The two of them laughed. Not interested. Sheng Guanqiu pulled the mermaid princess and walked around the two of them. Elder sister, who are they? The mermaid princess asked curiously. Just two scums. Sheng Guanqiu said. The mermaid princess nodded. The two young men in purple frowned when they saw that Sheng Guanqiu did not appreciate their kindness. Brotherly, I think we should forget about it. We can't afford to offend Sheng Guanqiu. The young man surnamed Wang said in a low voice. We can't afford to offend Sheng Guanqiu. But it's a pity to let go of such a beauty. The young man surnamed Li said unwillingly. It's a pity. The young man surnamed Wang nodded. He thought for a while and said, Why don't we try again? We won't do anything to them anyway. Let's just treat it as a shameless shopping trip with them. Okay, let's go. The young man surnamed Li nodded. Miss Shengguan, wait for us. The two of them immediately chased after Shangguanqiu. What do these two playboys want to do now? Needless to say, they must have taken a fancy to the girl beside Shangguanqiu. But with Shangguanqiu around, they can only feast their eyes on her. That's true. No one in Sky Dragon City dares to offend the steward of the treasure pavilion. The people discussed softly. She's really beautiful. With her beauty, she's definitely one of the best in Sky Dragon City. On the other side of the crowd, a few young men stood together and looked at the back of the mermaid princess while commenting. They looked ordinary but had an outstanding temperament, like cranes in a flock of chickens. And there was a pattern on their clothes that was also very eye-catching. That pattern was a flame pattern. And that was the pattern of Ninth Heaven Palace. Obviously, these people were all disciples of Ninth Heaven Palace. Something's not right. Why do I feel like I've seen her somewhere before? Suddenly, one of the young men who had been silent said, "Seen her before? When did this happen? Why don't we know about it?" The others were stunned and asked the young man hurriedly. "I can't remember at the moment." The young man shook his head. "In front. What do you want?" Shangguanqiu looked at the two rich playboys angrily. "Nothing? Aren't you shopping?" "We'll accompany you," the two of them said cheekily. The mermaid princess looked at the two of them and said with a smile, "You two are really familiar with each other." "Miss, you're flattering us. We've always been very friendly, so many people get along with us." "Miss, we've never seen you before in Sky Dragon City. May I know your name and where you're from?" When the two of them saw the mermaid princess talking, they immediately went up and smiled fawningly. "I don't like to chat with strangers. And I won't tell strangers my name. Young masters, please don't disturb me and Sister Shangguan," the mermaid princess said. "Sister? Shangguanqiu, why haven't I heard that you have a sister before?" The two of them looked at Shangguanqiu and asked. As for the mermaid princess's last sentence, they automatically ignored it. Shangguanqiu said with a cold face, "Didn't you hear my sister say not to disturb us?" The two of them licked their faces and did not care at all. What a pair of rascals. Shangguanqiu looked at the two of them with disdain. He pulled the mermaid princess and said with a smile, "Don't mind them. Let's go." The mermaid princess nodded with a smile. Then she ignored the two of them and looked curiously at the shops on both sides of the street. The two young men, despite Shangguanqiu's disdain, still followed the two of them happily. How shameless. That's right. They're so disdainful of them. And they still have the nerve to go up there? The pedestrians on the street also looked at the two of them with disdain. Wait. I remember now. She seems to be. In the crowd, the Ninth Heaven Palace disciple's eyes suddenly trembled. What do you remember? The companions next to him looked at him suspiciously. The disciple swallowed and transmitted his voice. She seems to be Jiang Haotian's woman. What? Jiang Haotian's woman. The few of them were shocked and quickly looked at the back of the mermaid princess again. It can't be wrong. It's her. Chapter 2180. That's not right. Why haven't I heard that Jiang Haotian has a woman? A slightly younger disciple asked suspiciously. That's because this woman only appeared once in the past few years. That's why people like you who entered the Nine Heaven Palace later don't know about her existence. Jiang Haotian and I entered the Nine Heaven Palace in the same year. And I was at the square when we signed up. Hui, Fire Lotus Jiang Rishuang, and this woman were there. The disciple said. So you're saying that you're friends with him? His companions looked at him in surprise. Friends. The disciple shook his head and said, when we signed up, he was only a low-tier war god. No one expected him to have such achievements today. That's why I didn't try to get close to him. That's a pity. His companions said. Yeah. If I could get close to him, I might be like Hui now and be doing well in the Nine Heaven Palace. The disciple said regretfully. Hui, I'm so jealous of him. I heard that he could have such achievements today because of Jiang Haotian's help. The other disciples were also full of hope. However, they didn't know that Hui was the Vice Palace Master's disciple. He didn't need to rely on Qin Feiyang. However, Hua Yi's identity had always been kept a secret. In the eyes of the disciples of the Nine Heaven Palace, he was just an ordinary disciple. Sister, there's a jewelry store in front. Let's go in and take a look. On the street, the mermaid princess saw a luxurious jewelry store and dragged Shang Guanqiu inside. The two young men also followed them inside. The jewelry store was huge. There were many people inside. Inside they sold jade, emerald and gemstones. Every piece was extremely exquisite. I didn't expect Manager Shangguan to come to my small store. A chubby middle-aged fatso walked quickly to Shang Guanqiu and said with a smile, Fatso Yuan, don't flatter me. Who in the Sky Dragon City doesn't know that your store is the biggest jade store in the city? Every item inside is priceless. Who knows how much you've earned from this jade store? Shang Guanqiu said. Fatty Yuan laughed and looked at the mermaid princess. He asked suspiciously, who is this? Shang Guanqiu said, she's my younger sister. I'm accompanying her for a walk. I see. Shall I show you around? Fatso asked. Sure. Shang Guanqiu nodded. Fatso Yuan, did you not see us? Seeing that Fatso was only talking to Shang Guanqiu and the mermaid princess, the two young men in purple were very displeased. Fatso was taken aback. He looked at the two of them and smiled. So it's young Master Wang and young Master Li. I'm really sorry. It's all Steward Shangguan and her sister's fault for being too dazzling, and not noticing you too. The corners of their mouths twitched. If he didn't like them, just say so. Was there a need to find such a lousy excuse? Young masters, I'll entertain Steward Shangguan and the others first. Feel free to look around. Forgive me, forgive me. Yuan Fatso cupped his hands and said. We're with them. The two of them said with a dark face. What? Together? Fatso was shocked. He looked at Shang Guanqiu and said, why are you with them? His eyes were full of disdain for the two of them. Don't mind them. They shamelessly followed us. Shang Guanqiu said indifferently. I see. Fatso smiled and said, let's go. I'll show you the jade. Okay. Shang Guanqiu nodded. Ladies, look at this blood phoenix jade pendant. This jade pendant is made of phoenix blood jade, which is rarely seen in 10,000 years. We found it in the Sky Dragon Sea. This piece of phoenix blood jade is worth 1 billion divine gems. And this ring is even more amazing. It's made of a 1,000,000-year-old glaze. It's worth 5 billion divine gems. Fatty Yuan walked in front of them and kept introducing the things placed in the counter. The mermaid princess listened with great interest. Young Master Li observed the mermaid princess and said, Brother, she seems to be interested in these things. A little. Young Master Wang nodded and said, why don't we give her a few things? Maybe we can win her heart. Good idea. Young Master Li smiled secretly. Fatso stopped in front of a counter and pointed at a jade pendant. He said with a smile, ladies, take a look at this. Shang Guanqiu and the mermaid princess looked down and saw an exquisite box on the counter. Inside the box was a jade pendant. The jade pendant was as big as a baby's palm. It was purple gold in color and had 2 divine dragons carved on it. The jade pendant was so exquisite that it looked like it was made by nature. In particular, the carving technique vividly displayed the divine dragon's demeanor, nobility, and arrogance. Overall, they looked like 2 real young dragons. The mermaid princess was stunned and immediately went up to it, her eyes full of curiosity. Seems like you know your stuff. This jade pendant is called the Double Dragon Pendant. It's made of purple gold divine jade. As for its value, someone has already bid 100 billion divine gems. Fatso said with a smile. 100 billion? The mermaid princess was stunned. She said, this jade pendant is indeed exquisite. But 100 billion divine gems, isn't that a bit too much? Too much. Fatso was stunned and shook his head with a smile. You don't know. This double dragon pendant is not only exquisite, but also has a magical ability. What ability? The mermaid princess was suspicious. Fatso looked at a staff member standing behind the counter and said, give me the double dragon pendant. The staff member immediately opened the counter and took out the double dragon pendant and handed it to Fatso. Lady, please take a look, Fatso said to the mermaid princess. He grabbed the double dragon pendant and pulled it gently. Immediately, the originally flawless twin dragon pendants had been split into two halves. What are you doing? The mermaid princess was shocked. Don't panic, lady. This double dragon pendant was originally made of two jade pendants. Fatso held half of it in one hand and said with a smile. The mermaid princess looked carefully. There was indeed no trace of damage at the joint of the two jade pendants. This double dragon pendant actually needs to be separated in order to unleash its magical ability. For example, you and Steward Shangguan. Drip your blood on it, and then wear one pendant each. When you are separated in the future, you can clearly sense each other's location through the double dragon pendant, Fatso said with a smile. So magical? The mermaid princess was surprised. No matter how far away they are, they can sense it? Shangguan Qiu was also interested. Yes. As long as they are in the northern region, they can sense it. Even if they enter the land of the dead, the land of the far west, and the Sky Dragon Sea, they can roughly sense each other's location through the double dragon pendant, Fatso said. Shangguan Qiu and the mermaid princess couldn't help but feel a little tempted. Young Master Wang and young Master Li looked at each other and knew that their opportunity had come. Young Master Wang looked at Fatso and said, "We want this double dragon pendant." "You want it?" Fatso looked at the two of them. The two nodded and said proudly, "Isn't it just 100 billion divine crystals? We have a way." The two young masters are really generous. Fatso laughed and then said, "But 100 billion divine crystals is not enough. Didn't you just say that someone else offered 100 billion? The two of them frowned. "Yes. But I didn't sell it. This double dragon pendant is at least 500 billion divine crystals before I sell it," Fatso said. "Damn. Are you taking us for fools?" The two of them said angrily. "No. I didn't force you. You don't have to," Fatso said innocently. The two of them were annoyed. "It's too expensive. I can't afford it." The mermaid princess also shook her head. She didn't even have 50 million divine crystals, let alone 500 billion. "Do you really want it? I'll give it to you," Shangguan Qiu said with a smile. That's not good," the mermaid princess said. "What's wrong with that?" "Fatso, give it to me first. As for the divine crystals, find me in the treasure pavilion later," Shangguan Qiu said. Steward Shangguan is really generous. Unlike some people who want to please others, but don't have the strength, Fatso said with a smile. "Damn. Brotherly, he's obviously talking about us," young Master Wang said angrily. Young Master Li's face was also very ugly. He looked at Fatso and said, "Isn't it just 500 billion divine crystals? I'll take it." "Are you sure?" Fatso looked at him. "I'm sure." Young Master Li nodded. Fatso said, "Then pay first and then deliver the goods." "Pay first and then deliver the goods." Young Master Li was stunned and said angrily, "Can't Shangguan Qiu pay another day? This is different. Steward Shangguan represents the treasure pavilion. The treasure pavilion's reputation is definitely trustworthy," Fatso said. Young Master Li said, "But I also represent the Li family." "The Li family? 500 billion divine gems is indeed nothing to your Li family. However, you might be able to obtain those 500 billion divine crystals from your father," Fatso said. "You." Young Master Li's face was full of anger. Suddenly, with a clang, a black battle axe appeared. Young Master Li grabbed the battle axe and pressed it on the counter with a bang. He looked at Fatso and said, "I'll use it as collateral." Fatso looked at the battle axe with a flash of light in his eyes. He shook his head and said, "Not enough. Not enough. This is a peak-level divine artifact," young Master Li said angrily. "I know. But here I have the final say. If I say it's not enough, it's not enough," Fatso said. Young Master Li was furious. But Shangguan Qiu and the mermaid princess were next to him, and there were many people around watching the show. He couldn't really get angry. He turned to look at young Master Wang and said, "Brother, give him your peak-level divine artifact too." Brotherly this. Young Master Wang hesitated. Don't worry. I'll send the divine crystals to him tomorrow morning at the latest. Young Master Li said. Okay. Young Master Wang nodded and took out a golden armor from his body. It was also a peak-level divine artifact. Young Master Li looked at Fatso and said, Is it okay now? 2 peak-level divine artifacts. It's barely enough, Fatso said with a smile. Chapter 2181. Barely enough? Hearing this, both young Master Li and young Master Wang were furious. The value of a peak-level divine artifact could not be measured by divine gems. Even in the treasure house, peak-level divine artifacts were rarely auctioned. But now, 2 peak-level divine artifacts were here. And he said it was barely enough? Wasn't he trying to embarrass them on purpose? But in front of a woman, he had to be gentlemanly. Just bear with it. Young Master Li took a deep breath and reached out his hand. Give it to me. Fatso looked at the twin dragon pendant reluctantly and handed it to young Master Li. Young Master Li, keep it well. Young Master Li grabbed it and ignored him. He turned to look at the mermaid princess and said with a smile, Miss, it's fate that brought us together. Please accept the other half. That's right. He only gave half to the mermaid princess. His intention was obvious. The mermaid princess looked at the jade pendant and shook her head. I don't know you. I can't accept your things. Don't misunderstand. I don't mean anything else. It's just a gift for you. Don't be so polite. Just accept it. Young Master Li grabbed the mermaid princess's hand and stuffed the other half of the jade pendant into the mermaid princess's hand. However, he couldn't bear to let go of his grip. Her skin was so soft and smooth. What are you doing? The mermaid princess frowned and struggled hard. But young Master Li did not let go. Instead, he used more strength. Seeing this, Sheng Guanqiu's face darkened. He shouted, Li, do you want to die? Ah. Young Master Li came back to his senses and quickly let go of the mermaid princess. But his face was full of reminiscence. This woman, whether in terms of beauty or other aspects, was the best. I don't need a gift. The mermaid princess threw the jade pendant to young Master Li with a cold face. Then she pulled Sheng Guanqiu and walked out. Don't go. Young Master Li hurriedly called out. Young Master Wang also hurriedly grabbed young Master Li and thought to himself, Brother Li, you got the advantage. What about me? Don't worry. When I get my hands on it, I'll definitely give you a share. Young Master Li laughed inwardly. All right. Young Master Wang nodded repeatedly. So lively. However, at this moment, a faint laugh was heard. Following closely, a young man in white appeared out of nowhere at the door, blocking Sheng Guanqiu and the mermaid princess. It was Qin Feiyang. It's Jiang Haotian. It's really him. He hasn't changed at all from 5 years ago. He's finally appeared. There was no news of him for the past 5 years. Where did he go? The people inside and outside were in an uproar. Young Master Li and young Master Wang also looked at Qin Feiyang in astonishment. The person who had disappeared for 5 years had finally appeared. Furthermore, he just so happened to appear here? Was it a coincidence? Why are you here? Wait. You're not secretly following us, are you? Sheng Guanqiu thought to himself. How is that possible? I just happened to pass by. Qin Feiyang coughed dryly and walked to young Master Li. He smiled and said, Young Master Li, I'm quite interested in this twin dragon pendant. Can I have a look? This. Young Master Li looked at the mermaid princess and then at Qin Feiyang. He looked hesitant. Why? Are you not going to give me face? Qin Feiyang was displeased. Young Master Li's expression changed. He quickly said, How can I not give face to Brother Jiang? Since Brother Jiang is interested, I'll give it to you. After saying that, he handed the twin dragon pendant to Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang chuckled. He grabbed the twin dragon pendant and looked at it curiously. What the hell is this guy doing? Sheng Guanqiu was suspicious. I don't know. The mermaid princess shook her head. After looking at it for a while, Qin Feiyang smiled and said, It's really a good piece of jade. Young Master Li, you've really put in a lot of effort to pick up girls. You have to give up something to gain something. Young Master Li smiled embarrassedly. This sentence makes a lot of sense. Qin Feiyang nodded. He looked at the mermaid princess from head to toe and said, "She's really a little beauty." Shang Guanqiu was stunned. He actually pretended that he didn't know her? Young Master Li and young Master Wang looked at each other. Could it be that Jiang Haoyan also took a fancy to that woman? Although they had a big family business, the man in front of them was a real ruthless person. Thinking back to 5 years ago, even Feng Yuan's family was defeated by him. They didn't dare to offend such a person at all. Young Master Wang said telepathically, "Brother Li, why don't we go with the flow?" Go with the flow? Young Master Li was stunned. Yes. We can't afford to offend this person. Why don't we go with the flow? This way, we might be able to make friends with him. Young Master Wang said to himself. Young Master Li thought for a while and said telepathically, "It makes sense. We can't offend him because of a woman." Then he went to Qin Feiyang and said with a smile, "Brother Jiang, if you are interested in her, then we'll let you have her." Let me have her? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Was he talking in his sleep? Yes. I'll also give you this double dragon pendant. You're new here, so you might not know the specific situation. That woman is very interested in this double dragon pendant. That's why I spent a lot of money to buy this double dragon pendant. Young Master Li said. I see. Qin Feiyang nodded and looked at young Master Li and young Master Wang with a trace of ridicule in his eyes. Then, he walked towards the mermaid princess. What a pity for such a beauty. Yes. Jiang Haoyan is so lucky. Young Master Wang and young Master Li sighed. Wait. That woman may not accept it. Young Master Li suddenly said. Yes. Although Jiang Haoyan and Shang Guanqiu have some friendship, it has nothing to do with that woman. She rejected you before, and this Jiang Haoyan is probably no exception. To be honest, it's also a pleasure to see Jiang Haoyan embarrassed in public. Young Master Wang laughed secretly. Then let's wait and see. Young Master Li crossed his arms and looked like he was watching a show. Qin Feiyang had already walked in front of the mermaid princess. He took half of the jade pendant and handed it to the mermaid princess. He said with a smile, "Little girl, are you willing to accept my love for you?" The mermaid princess looked at Qin Feiyang in shock. Was he confessing to her in public? What the hell, so direct? Young Master Li was a little dumbfounded. What a fool. Doesn't he know that he has to pick up girls step by step? Brother Li, just wait and see. That woman will definitely slap him on the spot. Young Master Wang sneered. He's really a fool. Young Master Li also felt a sense of schadenfreude. The luckiest thing that happened to me in this life is to meet you. I'm willing to use this life to take care of you and protect you. I'm willing to give you all the love I have in this life. I want to hold your hand and be with you until we grow old. I want to hold you and never let go for the rest of my life. In this life, you are the only one for me. Little girl, can you give me this chance? Qin Feiyang looked at the mermaid princess and said with a smile. It's really a confession? The mermaid princess was stunned. Although she had confirmed her relationship with Qin Feiyang for a long time, it was the first time she had officially confessed to him. And in her impression, Qin Feiyang was not a person who would say such words of love. What was going on? Why did it feel a little different today? Qin Feiyang asked. Are you willing? Naive, ridiculous. How can such a tacky confession move a woman? Young Master Li and young Master Wang sneered secretly. But at this moment, the mermaid princess suddenly smiled and grabbed the jade pendant in Qin Feiyang's hand. What? She actually accepted it. Young Master Li and young Master Wang's eyes suddenly widened. How could this be? They had already used such cliché confessions a long time ago, and women nowadays did not fall for them at all. But now, with just a few words, the other party had actually accepted it? Are you kidding? Qin Feiyang put his arms around the mermaid princess's slender waist and looked at young Master Li and young Master Wang proudly. You're hugging her now? The two were dumbfounded. They hugged right after the confession. This progress was too fast. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Young Master Li, young Master Wang. Now let's settle the score. Settle the score? The two were stunned and looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. I can understand that you're attracted to my wife. Who asked her to be so beautiful? But before young Master Li, you actually took the opportunity to take advantage of her. This is what I can't forgive. Qin Feiyang said. Hearing these words, the two were stunned and could not recover for a long time. He hugged her right after the confession. Not only did he hug her, but he also directly called her his wife. What's more, he even wanted to settle the score with them. It seemed that they knew this woman first. Even if they took advantage of her, it was before the confession. Before the confession, they had not confirmed their relationship. How could they settle the score with them? I'm very easy to talk to. If you apologize obediently, I won't pursue the matter. But if you dare to talk nonsense with me, the consequences are not something you can bear. Qin Feiyang said lightly. Young Master Li's face changed slightly and hurriedly said, Brother Jiang, can you be reasonable? Yes. That was before your confession. Besides, we didn't do anything to her. Young Master Wang also said, You want to talk nonsense with me? Okay, I'll tell you. You're not allowed to even think about my Jiang Haoyan's woman, let alone touch her. Qin Feiyang shouted. Young Master Wang's eyes trembled and said secretly, Brother Li, what should we do? How would I know? Young Master Li said angrily. He never thought that things would develop to this point. Qin Feiyang glanced at the two peak-level divine artifacts on the counter, then took a step forward and grabbed them in his hand. He said with a smile, These two divine artifacts are compensation. No. The two hurriedly cried out. You can't just say no? Are you in charge now? Qin Feiyang smiled coldly and directly sent the two divine artifacts to the castle. It's over. The two immediately collapsed powerlessly. Qin Feiyang returned to the mermaid princess's side and looked at the two. He said lightly, I originally planned to not pursue the matter if you had a better attitude and accepted these two divine artifacts. But you're not willing? This makes me unhappy. Chapter 2182. What else do you want? The two of them glared at Qin Feiyang angrily. Chop off your hands. Qin Feiyang said. What? The two of them trembled. Chopping off their hands was nothing. They could be reborn after taking the divine elixir of life. But they couldn't stand the humiliation. Qin Feiyang said coldly. Do you want me to do it myself? Don't push us too far. The two of them shouted. How dare you touch my woman? Not to mention bullying you. Even the families behind you won't be able to withstand my wrath. Qin Feiyang shouted, his eyes filled with killing intent. The two of them trembled. Yes. Even the Feng family was defeated by him, let alone their families. Qin Feiyang said, I'll ask you one last time. Are you going to chop or not? Chop, chop, chop. The two of them nodded and took out a dagger from their interspatial rings. They clenched their teeth and cut their wrists. Crack. Blood gushed out and dyed the ground red. Qin Feiyang nodded his head in satisfaction. He looked at Fatty Yuan who was standing in front of him, and an undetectable smile flashed through his eyes. At the same time, Fatso Yuan also smiled at Qin Feiyang. However, the two of them didn't say anything. Let's go. Qin Feiyang held the mermaid princess's hand and walked away. Seeing Qin Feiyang so close, Sheng Guanqiu couldn't help but feel disappointed. However, it quickly dissipated, and then he quickly left the jade shop. How dare he mess with Jiang Haotian's woman? He's really arrogant. He finally hit a wall this time. Let's see if he dares to act like a tyrant in Sky Dragon City. After Qin Feiyang and the other two left, the people inside and outside immediately looked at the two of them with gloating eyes. It's not like that. Jiang Haotian is being unreasonable. The two of them shouted hysterically. Jiang Haotian is being unreasonable? Young Master Li, young Master Wang, it seems that you really don't know that woman's identity. Let me tell you, she had already appeared before senior brother Jiang entered Nine Heavens Palace. Furthermore, at that time, she was already senior brother Jiang's woman. The disciples of Nine Heavens Palace were also watching the show, and when they saw the two of them complaining about being wronged, they couldn't help but reveal the truth. What? She has long been Jiang Haotian's woman. So you're saying that we were tricked by Jiang Haoyan? Young Master Li and the young man looked at each other. Plotting against you? Don't be naive. What qualifications do you have for senior brother Jiang to scheme against you? You guys overestimated yourselves and provoked his woman. That's why he taught you guys a lesson. You should be satisfied. After all, you didn't lose your lives because of this. After the 9 Heavens Palace's disciples finished speaking, they left with sneers on their faces. So she was originally Jiang Haoyan's woman. No wonder she accepted Jiang Haoyan's confession. Only then did everyone come to a realization. However, young Master Li and young Master Li both had long faces. Why were they so unlucky? They had provoked this vicious person. We lost a peak divine artifact. How are we going to explain this when we return? The two of them got up in a sorry state and walked out with their tails between their legs. Wait. However, at this moment Fatso spoke up. What? The two of them turned back to look at him. Fatso said, of course it's to settle the divine crystals for the twin dragon pendant. The two of them were stunned and immediately said angrily, isn't the twin dragon pendant in Jiang Haoyan's hands right now? Why are you still asking us for divine crystals? Nonsense. It's not like I gave it to Jiang Haoyan. It's you guys. Moreover, everyone here saw with their own eyes that I personally handed the twin dragon pendant to you. If I don't ask you for divine crystals now, who else can I ask? Fatso said. Young Master Li said angrily, but we also used 2 peak divine artifacts. Yes. You used 2 peak divine artifacts as collateral. But did I take them? No way. In fact, I didn't even touch them from the beginning to the end. Since I didn't take them, then this collateral can't be counted. Fatso said. You're extorting us. The two of them glared at Fatso angrily. You can eat whatever you want, but you can't say such things carelessly. Everyone is watching. How is this extortion? In short, if you don't settle the bill today, don't even think about leaving. Men. Fatso shouted. Several burly men immediately ran out from the side door. Drag them to the back and inform the Li family and the Wang family. Tell them to bring the divine crystals to ransom them. Fatso said. Yes. The burly men nodded. Young Master Li and young Master Li felt bitter. Not only were their hands chopped off in front of everyone, they were humiliated and lost a peak divine artifact. Now they had to pay 500 billion divine crystals. What a huge loss. On the street, Qin Feiyang walked expressionlessly. The mermaid princess leaned on Qin Feiyang's shoulder like a little bird. Their hands were tightly clasped together. What's wrong? You haven't said a word since you came out. Sheng Guanqiu looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. You're still asking me? Qin Feiyang was instantly annoyed. What do you mean? Sheng Guanqiu was confused. Qin Feiyang stopped and looked at Sheng Guanqiu. He said angrily, I trusted you with her, but how did you take care of her? How could you let those 2 pieces of trash touch her? Sheng Guanqiu's face froze. The mermaid princess said, Brother Tian, you can't blame Sister Shengguan. Those 2 are too shameless. Shut up. Qin Feiyang scowled. The mermaid princess stuck out her tongue and stood obediently beside Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang looked at Sheng Guanqiu and said, Let me tell you. Fortunately, we're friends. Otherwise, I wouldn't let you go. Fine. You're good. I can't afford to offend you. Goodbye. No, never see you again. Sheng Guanqiu was also angry. He roared and turned to leave angrily. Sister Shengguan. The mermaid princess panicked and hurried to chase after him. Don't chase him. Qin Feiyang pulled her back. What are you doing? It's not Sister Shengguan's fault. The mermaid princess said unhappily. I know it's not her fault. I've been following you and saw the whole thing. Qin Feiyang said. The mermaid princess was puzzled. Then why are you so fierce to her? Qin Feiyang said. It's all because of your nonsense. I'm nonsense? The mermaid princess was even more puzzled. Qin Feiyang said. Old Zhao told me everything. The mermaid princess was stunned and muttered. He's too talkative. You call that talkative? Old Zhao is doing it for our own good. Qin Feiyang said. The mermaid princess frowned and said, That's not nonsense. You. Qin Feiyang angrily knocked on the mermaid princess's forehead and sighed. You know that I can't accept any other woman in my heart except for you. How would you know if you don't try? The mermaid princess still gave up. What's wrong with you? Isn't it good to have such a devoted man? Why do you have to push me into the arms of other women? If you really want to do that, fine. I'll love every woman I see in the future. Qin Feiyang said angrily. Don't be angry. I don't really want to push you into the arms of other women. You see, even if it's an outstanding woman like Shangguanqiu, I still have to observe her first. The mermaid princess said with a smile. Don't think so much. Your man's name is Qin Feiyang. Does he need to rely on women to survive in the ancient world? Qin Feiyang secretly snorted. Yes, yes, yes. You can do it. I was wrong, okay? I promise I won't do it again. The mermaid princess raised her hand and said. You. Qin Feiyang glared at her. Then a smile crept onto his face as he said. Were you moved by my confession just now? Yes. But also very surprised. How can a blockhead like you think of such a mushy thing? The mermaid princess giggled. Qin Feiyang grinned and said. I also admire myself. If it were in the past, I would never have said such a thing. Yes, that's rare. The mermaid princess nodded and felt happy. Actually, I confessed to you because I wanted to let those trash know that you're my woman, so that they won't harass you in the future. Secondly, I wanted to tell Shangguanqiu that it's impossible between me and her. As you said, she's a good woman. She can't be ruined by me. She deserves a better home. Qin Feiyang said. The mermaid princess nodded. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Let me tell you another secret. What secret? The mermaid princess was puzzled. Qin Feiyang said. Actually, I ordered Fatso to do those things before. You ordered him to do that? The mermaid princess was stunned. Yes. Since they dared to have improper thoughts about my woman, they have to pay a price. So I secretly asked Fatso to provoke young Master Li and Shangguanqiu, and then come out to teach them a lesson. Qin Feiyang said. I see. No wonder you and he had a strange look in your eyes when you left. So you've already colluded with each other. The mermaid princess suddenly understood. Those two are stupid. They were really angered by Fatso and took out 2 peak-level divine artifacts. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. The mermaid princess asked. Did you and Fatso know each other before? No. Qin Feiyang shook his head. If you don't know each other, why would he help you? And it doesn't seem to be good for him. The mermaid princess was puzzled. Silly girl. You've been shopping with Shangguanqiu for so long. Don't you know your man's status in the northern region? As long as I say the word, who won't help? Qin Feiyang said proudly. Look at how proud you are. The mermaid princess rolled her eyes. Qin Feiyang chuckled and said, As for the benefits, of course there are. What benefits? The mermaid princess was suspicious. This twin dragon pendant is indeed extraordinary, but it's not worth 500 billion. At most, it's worth 200 billion. And now young Master Li and Shangguanqiu are going to pay him 500 billion divine crystals. This is several times the profit. Of course he's happy. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Wait. Why don't I understand? Aren't the twin dragon pendant in our hands now? The mermaid princess said. You don't admit that you're stupid. Think about it. Who gave me the twin dragon pendant? It's young Master Li and Shangguanqiu. Now that I've taken the twin dragon pendant, Fatso must be going to them to pay the bill. Qin Feiyang said. So that's how it is. The mermaid princess suddenly understood. I like your kindness and innocence, so don't think about these scheming things. I've already told Fatso what to do. Whether he can get the 500 billion divine crystals in the end will depend on his means. Qin Feiyang said. The mermaid princess looked at Qin Feiyang affectionately and suddenly giggled. Well, I'll have you for everything. From now on, I'll be responsible for being a naive and happy little woman. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, Let's go. I'll show you around. Okay. The mermaid princess nodded. Her obedient appearance made Qin Feiyang like her even more. His eyes were full of love for the mermaid princess. Fuping Chinese. Chapter 2183. Treasure Pavilion. Bastard, bastard. You're such a bastard. Sheng Guanqiu was lying on the desk, crying and cursing at the same time. Her face was full of grievance. Little Qiu, what are you doing? All of a sudden, a faint laugh was heard. As the laughter ended, an old man with white hair and a walking stick appeared in front of the desk out of thin air. Deputy Pavilion Master. Sheng Guanqiu quickly stood up, wiped away her tears, tidied herself up and bowed to him. Why are you crying at such an old age? Did someone bully you? Tell me, I'll go and settle the score with him. The Deputy Pavilion Master said angrily. No, no. Sheng Guanqiu quickly waved her hands. Silly girl, do you think I don't know? If I didn't know, I wouldn't have come to comfort you. The Deputy Pavilion Master sighed, his eyes full of heartache. Sheng Guanqiu was stunned and frowned. Sir, did you send someone to follow me? Follow? Do you think I have the time? You were scolded by Jiang Haoyan on the street. There were so many people watching. How could I not know? The Deputy Pavilion Master said unhappily. Sheng Guanqiu hurriedly said, I'm sorry, sir, I thought too much. It's okay. The Deputy Pavilion Master waved his hand and sat by the tea table. Come and sit down. Sheng Guanqiu quickly walked to the tea table and sat opposite the Deputy Pavilion Master. The Deputy Pavilion Master asked, Tell me honestly, do you really like Jiang Haotian? Sheng Guanqiu's body stiffened. The Deputy Pavilion Master smiled. Just tell me, don't be shy. Sheng Guanqiu hesitated for a while and said, I don't know. If you like him, you like him. If you don't like him, you don't like him. What's there to be confused about? The Deputy Pavilion Master looked at her suspiciously. It's hard to describe this feeling. Sheng Guanqiu said. The Deputy Pavilion Master was stunned and asked curiously, Tell me about it. I've been there before, I can help you. When I first met him, I didn't like him. Instead, I was a little disgusted. Because he's a little arrogant and doesn't put anyone in his heart. He's always full of confidence as if victory is in his grasp. But later on, after getting along with him, I realized that he actually has many good points. For example, he's loyal, and smart. Especially when he was dealing with the Feng clan. His calm and composed attitude in the face of danger made me gradually admire him. But it's just appreciation. Even though there were countless rumors about what happened between me and him later, I didn't take it to heart. But during the 5 years he disappeared, I couldn't help but think of him every night. And it's getting stronger each time. Now that I think about it, I've seen countless handsome young men in the Treasure Pavilion over the years, but I've never seen a man make me feel this way. Sheng Guanqiu said softly. The Vice Pavilion Master pondered for a while and asked, How did you feel when he appeared in front of you after disappearing for 5 years? Sheng Guanqiu said, When I returned to the study in the afternoon, I saw him sitting by the coffee table. I was very happy. The Vice Pavilion Master said, How did you feel when you heard him confess to that girl in the jade shop? Very disappointed and melancholy. Sheng Guanqiu said. The Vice Pavilion Master said, And then on the street he blamed you. You felt wronged and sad, right? Sheng Guanqiu nodded. Silly girl. That's because you like him. The Vice Pavilion Master sighed. Is that what it means to like someone? Sheng Guanqiu murmured. So this is how it feels to like someone. Actually, as early as 5 years ago, I wanted to matchmake you too, but he rejected me directly. The reason is that he already has someone in his heart. And this time, when he confessed to that girl in public, he's indirectly telling you that he won't like another girl. The Vice Pavilion Master said. So that's how it is. How shameless. Who would like him? Sheng Guanqiu said disdainfully. You're such a stubborn girl. But it's not too late to turn back now. Although I don't have much contact with Jiang Haoyan, I can tell that he's a very infatuated person. So it's impossible between you and him. If you insist, you'll be the one who gets hurt. This is not what your master and I want to see. We all want you to be happy and happy. The Vice Pavilion Master smiled. Sheng Guanqiu said, Thank you for your concern. Girl, you're so beautiful and capable. The people who like you can line up from here to Empyrean Palace. There's no need to be sad for him. It's better for you and him to let go as soon as possible. The Vice Pavilion Master said. Line up from here to Empyrean Palace? Sheng Guanqiu blushed. She lowered her head and said, Sir, is it so exaggerated? I'm being conservative, so it's not exaggerated at all. The Vice Pavilion Master smiled. Sheng Guanqiu was quite embarrassed. She got up and said gratefully, Thank you for your advice, sir. I'll think about it seriously. Think about it? The Vice Pavilion Master was stunned. Wasn't he clear enough? He wanted her to let go, not think about it. Wait a minute. Could it be that this girl's feelings for Jiang Haoyan were deeper than he thought? So she had no choice but to make a decision immediately? Don't say. That was really possible. After all, it was 5 years of lovesickness. This kind of feeling, perhaps even this girl herself didn't realize it. That was not a good thing. Sir, I'll get back to work. Sheng Guanqiu smiled, turned around, and walked out of the study quickly. The Vice Pavilion Master wanted to stop her and persuade her, but he swallowed the words that were on the tip of his tongue. Forget it. Let the young people deal with their own matters. I don't ask for anything else. I just hope for a perfect ending. The Vice Pavilion Master shook his head and smiled. In the blink of an eye, 10 days passed. Qin Feiyang and the Mermaid Princess left their footprints in every corner of Sky Dragon City. In any case, for the next 10 days, they didn't think about anything else. They ate, drank, and played. Late at night, South City. In a restaurant, Qin Feiyang stood in front of the window, looking at the moon outside. The Mermaid Princess nestled in his arms obediently. Are you happy these days? Qin Feiyang asked with a smile. As long as you're here, no matter what I do, no matter where I am, I'm happy. The Mermaid Princess nodded. When Qin Feiyang heard this, he couldn't help but tighten his grip on the Mermaid Princess, as if he was deeply afraid that she would fly away from his embrace. The room became quiet again. Seeing that Qin Feiyang did not speak, the Mermaid Princess asked suspiciously, What are you thinking about? How about? Qin Feiyang hesitated for a moment and said, Why don't we get married? Get married? The Mermaid Princess was stunned. She looked up at Qin Feiyang and asked, Are you kidding? No. Old Zhao is right. You've been so good to me. I should give you an official status. Qin Feiyang said. The Mermaid Princess looked at Qin Feiyang in a daze. To be honest, she had been waiting for this moment for a long time. But then, she lowered her head and fell silent. What's wrong? You don't want to? Qin Feiyang asked nervously. I do. Of course I do. The Mermaid Princess hurriedly said. Qin Feiyang asked suspiciously, Then why don't you say anything? I think that marriage is a big event. Parents should be present. But now we're in the ancient world. Both of our parents are not here. I feel that if we get married now, it won't be perfect. The Mermaid Princess said. But Qin Feiyang frowned. Are you afraid that I'll run away with someone else? The Mermaid Princess asked with a smile. Of course not. I'm such a good man. You won't be able to find one even if you look around. Qin Feiyang said proudly. The Mermaid Princess didn't refute and just looked at him quietly. Qin Feiyang couldn't help but look embarrassed. He smiled and said, Well, I admit that I'm a little scared. You're so stubborn. The Mermaid Princess rolled her eyes at him and turned to lie in Qin Feiyang's arms. She whispered, Don't worry, I've already attached myself to you in this life. Even if you want to drive me away, I won't leave. Thank you. Qin Feiyang was extremely touched. Fool. The Mermaid Princess said angrily. I'm a fool. A fool has a fool's luck. Qin Feiyang laughed mischievously. You're not serious. The Mermaid Princess rolled her eyes and said, Do you think we can go back in the future? Of course. I promise you that not only will we be able to go back, but everyone will return to the Great Qin Empire alive. Including the ancestors. Qin Feiyang smiled. I believe you. The Mermaid Princess nodded. With the beauty in his arms and her fragrance in his nose, Qin Feiyang was a little uneasy. He chuckled and said, Little girl, it's so quiet in the middle of the night. Should we? Bad guy, what are you thinking? The Mermaid Princess said angrily, but she didn't have the slightest intention of resisting. Her cheeks were red like a ripe peach. What do you think I'm thinking? Qin Feiyang laughed and carried the mermaid princess to the bed next to them. Dong. However, at this moment, there was a knock on the door. Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned, and a burst of anger immediately rose in his heart. Who was so insensible to come and cause trouble in the middle of the night? Seeing the flustered and exasperated Qin Feiyang, the mermaid princess didn't say anything and just looked at him with a smile. Still smiling. Little girl, let's see how I'll deal with you today. Qin Feiyang threw the mermaid princess on the bed and pounced on her like a hungry wolf. Someone is looking for you. The mermaid princess was stunned. Ignore him. Qin Feiyang shook his head. How could he be in the mood to care about other things now? Dong. But at this moment, there was another knock on the door. A row of black lines appeared on Qin Feiyang's forehead. He rushed to the door angrily and opened it, only to see 4 people standing outside. What are you doing? Don't you know what time it is now? Get lost. Before he could see the 4 people's faces clearly, Qin Feiyang shouted angrily, and then closed the door with a bang. The 4 people outside the door looked at each other. What was going on? Looking for someone in the middle of the night, you really don't know how to behave at all. Qin Feiyang shook his head and looked at the mermaid princess lying on the bed, who was looking at him with a smile. He snorted and said, Don't be complacent. No matter what you say tonight, I won't let you go. After that, he ran to the bed excitedly. Dong. But at this moment, there was another knock on the door. Chapter 2184. Damn you. Qin Feiyang was about to explode. He turned around and walked towards the door with a gloomy face. Mermaid Princess also stood up. She tidied up her messy dress and hair. Then, she stood aside and looked at Qin Feiyang with amusement. Qin Feiyang opened the door and stared at the 4 of them fiercely. When the 4 of them saw Qin Feiyang in this state, they couldn't help but feel nervous. But suddenly Qin Feiyang was stunned. He looked past the 2 people in front of him and saw the 2 people standing behind them. They were 2 young men in purple. They had extraordinary looks and a hint of arrogance in their expressions. It's you guys. Qin Feiyang was surprised. That's right. These 2 people were young Master Li and young Master Wang, who were taught a lesson by Qin Feiyang 10 days ago. The 2 of them smiled unnaturally at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang looked at the 2 people in front of him. They were middle-aged men who were neatly dressed. Their eyes were full of vigor, and there was a threatening aura between their eyebrows. Qin Feiyang asked suspiciously, You guys are? I'm Wang Dahai. I'm Li Chanfeng. Nice to meet you, Brother Jiang. The 2 of them cupped their hands and smiled. Wang Dahai? Li Chanfeng? Qin Feiyang mumbled and asked. You guys are their fathers? Yes. The 2 of them nodded. What's the matter? Qin Feiyang frowned. Wang Dahai smiled and said, 10 days ago, these 2 unfilial sons failed to recognize Brother Jiang and offended you. Therefore, we brought them here specially to ask for your forgiveness. Ask for your forgiveness? Qin Feiyang was stunned. He sneered and said, I'm afraid it's not that simple. Come in and talk. After that, Qin Feiyang turned and walked into the tea room. The mermaid princess obediently walked beside him and began to make tea. Wang Dahai and Li Changfeng looked at each other and quickly walked into the room. When they saw the mermaid princess, they were stunned. They immediately understood why Qin Feiyang was so angry. Little brother, I'm really sorry. We didn't know that you were resting. Why don't we come back tomorrow? The 2 hurriedly said. Qin Feiyang said indifferently, Since you're already here, just say what you have to say. Then I'll have to trouble you. The 2 of them cupped their hands and smiled, then walked into the tea room. However, young Master Li and young Master Li stood outside the door without moving. They seemed to be very afraid. Why are you still standing outside? Come in quickly. Wang Dahai shouted. Their bodies trembled, and they hurriedly ran into the room. Qin Feiyang said, Close the door. Young Master Li hurriedly turned around and closed the door. Li Changfeng looked at the 2 of them and said sternly, Get over here and kneel down to apologize. Big Brother Jiang, I'm sorry. It's all our fault. We won't dare to do it again. That's right, that's right. Please forgive us. The two of them hurriedly ran into the tea room, knelt on the floor and begged. Enough. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and stopped the two of them. He looked at Wang Dahai and young Master Li and said, "Tell me your real purpose." The two of them looked at each other and bowed. Little brother Jiang, please be magnanimous and return the two pinnacle divine weapons to us. I knew it wasn't that simple. Qin Feiyang smiled coldly. The two of them laughed dryly, full of flattery. Pinnacle divine weapons. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and asked curiously, although I don't know the Li family and Wang family well, since you can take out 500 billion divine gems, you must be a famous family in Sky Dragon City. We're sorry. Our two families are considered one of the four major families in Sky Dragon City. The two of them waved their hands and said, one of the four major families? Qin Feiyang was stunned and a little surprised. He smiled and said, I didn't expect you to be so humble. No. In front of little brother Jiang, the four major families are not worth mentioning. The two of them laughed. If you're too humble, you're showing off. Since the two of you are one of the four major families in Sky Dragon City, you definitely don't lack divine weapons. But why are you humbling yourself and asking for them back? Qin Feiyang said. Little brother, aren't you asking the obvious? Pinnacle divine weapons are not comparable to perfect divine weapons. There aren't many divine weapons in Sky Dragon City. Moreover, no one would be willing to sell divine weapons of this grade. So every pinnacle divine weapon is extremely rare. And our two families only have one. You can say that it's the treasure of our families. The two of them said. Only one? Qin Feiyang smirked and glanced at young Master Li and Wang Changfeng. He sneered and said, if there's only one, would you be willing to give it to these two prodigal sons? Wang Dahai and Wang Changfeng looked at each other and anger flashed in their eyes. How could he call his son a prodigal son in front of his father? What did he think of them? Li Changfeng suppressed his anger and said with a smile, Brother Jiang, what we said is true. We're not lying to you. Are you sure? Qin Feiyang looked at him playfully. I'm sure. Li Changfeng nodded. Good. Although I've left Nine Heaven Palace, there are still many people in Nine Heaven Palace who are friends with me. I'll get them to check on the two of you now. If they find out that you have extra pinnacle divine weapons, give them all to me. Qin Feiyang said. The two of them froze. Actually, I can understand you. After all, pinnacle divine weapons are as rare as you said. However, it won't be easy for me to spit them out once they're in my mouth. Qin Feiyang said plainly. State your conditions. As long as it's within our means, it's fine. Wang Dahai said. Before they came, they had already expected that it wouldn't be easy to get the two divine weapons back from this person. No conditions. In other words, no matter what you say, I won't return them to you. Actually, you should feel lucky. Because with my character, anyone who offends me won't have a good ending. This time, I've only taken away two divine weapons and chopped off their hands. I've already left enough face for both of you. Qin Feiyang said. The two of them couldn't help but frown. Qin Feiyang said plainly. If there's nothing else, please. Wang Dahai said. We're here with sincerity. Qin Feiyang said. Didn't I receive you politely? You call this politeness? Wang Dahai was instantly enraged. He said in a low voice. Is there really no room for negotiation? Qin Feiyang said. I don't want to repeat myself. Don't go overboard. Don't forget that you're no longer a disciple of Ninth Heaven Palace. Wang Dahai and Wang Dahai couldn't help but stare at Qin Feiyang furiously. So what? Do you dare to attack me because I'm not a disciple of Ninth Heaven Palace? As one of the four major families of Sky Dragon City, you should have many disciples in Ninth Heaven Palace. Then you must know how I killed Feng Zihan back then. Don't misunderstand. I'm not threatening you. I just want to tell you that it's best to be rational when you speak and do things. Otherwise, you'll bring disaster to your clan. Qin Feiyang chuckled. Disaster to our clan. Wang Dahai and Wang Dahai's pupils contracted. Qin Feiyang pointed to the door and said, Take care. I won't send you off. Their faces were as dark as water. Didn't you hear me clearly? Seeing the two of them standing there without moving, Qin Feiyong couldn't help but have a cold look in his eyes. Sigh. The two of them sighed helplessly. They looked at young Master Li and Wang Dahai and said, "They have already asked us to leave. Why are you still kneeling? Get up and go home." Young Master Li and young Master Wang quickly got up and followed Wang Dahai and Wang Dahai to the door. But when they reached the door, Wang Dahai and Li Changfeng sneered coldly at the same time. "Do it." Immediately after, the two of them shouted in unison. Immediately, two black-clothed old men appeared beside the mermaid princess out of thin air and grabbed her arms. Qin Feiyong suddenly stood up. The mermaid princess was also panicking. Haha. Right at this moment, Wang Dahai and Jiang Haotian laughed heartily. They slowly turned their heads to look at Qin Feiyong and said, Jiang Haotian, how good would it be if you had obediently returned the divine artifact to us? Why did you have to force us to attack? Qin Feiyong looked at the two of them, and then at the two old men in black. Their auras were unfathomable. They were at least at the monarch god level. He looked at the flustered mermaid princess and comforted her. "I'm here. Don't be afraid. It's useless even if you're here. I'm not afraid to tell you now. When we came in, old Wang and old Li had already followed us in secretly. It's just that the space divine item they were hiding in was embedded with the soul concealing stone." Young Master Li and young Master Wang were no longer humble. They looked at Qin Feiyong with sneers on their faces. The two old men in black were also sneering. Qin Feiyong glanced at the six of them and said in a deep voice, "Let me give you a piece of advice. You'd better let her go immediately." "What if we don't? Now that she's in our hands, what can you do even if you're extremely capable?" Young Master Li and old Li walked to the mermaid princess and chuckled. "Do you know what consequences this will bring to you?" Qin Feiyong looked at the two of them gloomily. "We don't know. But we know that after you die, we'll definitely take good care of her for you." Young Master Li and old Li smiled obscenely and emphasized the word, "take good care." Huff. Qin Feiyong took a deep breath. He didn't want to talk nonsense with these two pieces of trash. He turned to Wang Dahai and old Li and said, "Are you sure you won't let her go? You should be clear about the situation. Now we have the final say, and you don't even have the right to negotiate with us. But that's not important. Anyway, you have to die. After all, you Jiang Haotian are still a threat." Wang Dahai walked leisurely to the front of the coffee table. He sat down on the chair and smiled at Qin Feiyong. "Don't talk nonsense with him." Li Changfeng smiled coldly. He looked at Qin Feiyong and said, "Are you going to do it yourself, or should we?" Qin Feiyong looked at the two of them with flickering eyes. Suddenly he said, "I'm a little puzzled. Isn't it just two pinnacle divine artifacts? Is there a need to kill me?" "Of course it's not just those two divine artifacts," Wang Dahai said. Qin Feiyong's heart skipped a beat. He asked, "Is there any other reason?" Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.